Sup folks, welcome to the part 8, of What If Deku Run an Orphanage, chapter 42. Red and green. So let me say this again, that thing in the last chapter was not the collapse. It was just something leading up to the collapse. I also want to say, I am not a doctor, or nurse, or any sort of medical professional. So don't really expect any actual medical terms because I don't want to embarrass myself by saying that Izuku is suffering from something only for the symptoms Izuku is showing to not match up with whatever I say he has or something along those lines. So what does Izuku have? Vague anime health issues. Thankfully Inko isn't the one with this issue. That disease has a 100% kill rate on moms. Of course, Izuku knows he should see a doctor, and he said he would see one. But come on. It's Izuku. We all know that's not gonna happen. Alright, let's get the show on the road. Class 1A was kinda confused. Everyone, sans Bakugo, was taken over to the cafeteria and they got their lunches, but instead of going to the lunch tables and going about their usual business, Netsu gathered them all back and they were being led through the hallways. Principal Netsu? What is happening? Ida asked, not able to do his arm-chopping motions because he was holding his lunch. You'll see, Netsu told them. That made everyone a bit nervous. If Netsu had something planned, it probably wasn't very good. For them, that is. Eventually, they arrived at a pair of doors that lead outside the building. Today you all will be eating outside, Netsu told them, putting his hands on the doors. As for why, Netsu opened the door, and for once the students were pleasantly surprised. Outside in one of U's yards, was the kids, eating on a few wooden picnic tables that the staff set up. They were all currently at one table, all talking to each other, except Kei, who was off to the side eating a pile of meat, and Yami who was just sitting there listening. Hey, they're here. Netsu, now fully donning his fireproof clothes, pointed at the students, swiftly causing them to swarm the poor teens. Kiba, thanks to her super speed, immediately sped over to Tokoyami. You. Bring out your shadow servant. Oh. She's like this all the time. Tokoyami realized, much to his horror. Fu sent out a black tentacle and smacked her in the back of the head. Manners. Ow. Kiba pouted at her brother as she rubbed the place where he hit her. Fu gave Tokoyami an apologetic look as best he could. Yeah, she's always like this. Sorry. Don't apologize. I think it's funny. Dark shadow came out of Tokoyami and hovered over Kiba. HMPH. You won't find me so amusing when I surpass you. Kiba swore. Mark my word, Shadow. You will kneel before me. Ahaha. I look forward to seeing you try. Dark Shadow challenged. Meanwhile, Netsu ran up to Todoroki, and the older boy gave the flaming child a conflicted look. You that ice guy, right? Your quirk is so cool. We should fight sometime. Can you turn your quirk off? Todoroki asked him. Nope. The flame's always on. Netsu shrugged. Don't worry. My clothes are fireproof. Just don't touch my head. Todoroki knew it wasn't fair to dislike this child he just met because his quirk reminded him of someone he'd rather not be thinking about. But at the same time, he couldn't help but be reminded of his father's flaming facial hair, while looking at the blazing face of Netsu. Meanwhile, Sansan, now in her non-acidic form, made her way over to Mina and wrapped herself around her. Mina. Yes. Please. Call me that forever. Mina said with a deadly serious voice, before squealing. Aw, you're so cute like this. And you're blue now. Sansan nodded. Not burning. Oh yeah. Your acid isn't burning anything. Tara pointed out. This is Sansan's neutral form. By injecting some chemicals into her body, we can force her body into breeding mode, which makes her body non-corrosive. Netsu explained. Of course it does wear off, so we will have to inject her regularly. Cool. Wait, did you say breeding mode? Mina asked in a disbelieving tone. Yes, I don't think you needed any more encouragement not to allow her into your private parts, but if you did, there it is, Netsu said. Wait, does that mean that she's made of kawa? Kaminari didn't get to finish, as Jiro stabbed him with one of her ear lobes. Kai walked over, each footsteps causing a gentle shaking in the ground, before leaning one of his heads down towards the group. "Yap," was the only noise that came out of Mineta's mouth as he trembled in fear. "Mr. Netsu? Is Mr. Bakugo okay?" Kai asked the principal with a concerned expression. Well, at least what they thought was concerned. It was hard to read the expressions of giant serpentine hydra heads. "Pa. I don't see why you should be concerned for such a horrid creature," Kiba growled as she crossed her arms. "He is more soulless than the Grim. And they don't have any souls. Mr. Bakugo will be just fine, and your concern for him despite knowing what he's done to your father is appreciated," Netsu told him. "Kai, you're too nice for your own good." Okako walked over and patted the side of Kai's head, causing the young boy to purr, like a cat. Oh, didn't expect him to make that noise. Tar honestly didn't know what noises to expect from someone like Kay, but it certainly wasn't purring. It's kinda cute. With a few more people joining in on the petting, Kaminari looked past the other kids and saw Yami, still seated, and eating. "Hey, I don't remember seeing that kid before?" "Ah, Yami. Has been so long since we have last met." Ida ran up to the boy, who still had a mouthful of food. Yami responded. "Wait." Mina paused her petting, and squinted at Yami, finding something unnerving about his appearance. "Is he the kid who made all those Grim?" "Yup," Asui confirmed. "I didn't know he could do that when I met him. So much power, in such a little body, Karo. I feel like that's an accurate description of all of these kids," Shito said, looking at Netsu and remembering that absolutely insane fire blast he let off. "Yeah, that's why our parents didn't want us," Fu said. "It was so sudden and so matter-of-fact, that it took everyone but Nezo off guard." "Hey, that's not true," Kiba protested. "Yami's parents were eaten by wolves." Yami grunted in affirmation. "Oh right, then all of our parents but Yami's didn't want us," Fu corrected. With the entire class now sad and slightly uneasy, Netsu decided now it was time to leave. "Well, I will be leaving now. Enjoy your lunches," Netsu said as he turned to leave. "Wait." Kirishima called out to the tiny principal, causing him to stop and turn towards his student. "Oh, is there something wrong, Mr. Kirishima?" Netsu asked. "Yeah, I was wondering if I could talk to Midoriya?" Kirishima asked. "Actually, where is Izuku?" Okako asked, suddenly realizing that the Gurinet was nowhere to be found. "Izuku Midoriya is currently doing some work in one of the teachers' lounges," Netsu revealed. "If you'd like to speak to him, I would be more than happy to allow that." Okako was about to ask if she could go too, eager to catch up with her friend. However, suddenly she felt someone tugging her hand and looked down to see Fu holding on to one of her fingers. "We need to talk about Dad," Fu said in a hushed voice. Now while Fu said it in his normal deadpan voice, there was an underlying pleading and seriousness that Okako only picked up because she'd been around Fu. Okako nodded, and the two went off the side. "Alrighty then. Mr. Kirishima, please come with me." Netsu turned around and walked back inside, with Kirishima following suit. "Alright, everyone. Let us sit down and engage in conversation. Please remember not to talk while your mouth is full," Ida ordered. Meanwhile, on the side with Okako and Fu. "So what happened? Is Izuku okay? Is he overworking himself?" Okako asked with a worried expression. It had been, in her opinion, too long since she'd last visited Izuku. But with all the work she'd been given and with Izuku's house being so out of the way, it was hard for her to make time to see her best friend. "He's definitely working too much." Fu didn't know much about what his father did exactly, but he could tell just using logic that it was too much. From what he heard, taking care of one kid was hard work. let alone over 10. Yami can see that he's stressed. Literally. And it's getting worse every day. Yami tried talking to him about it but he snapped at him. Dad never snaps at anyone. Okako cringed. Izuku was the nicest person she knew. And the only time she'd ever really seen him get angry is when talking about neglectful or abusive parents, or overhaul. And even then it was brief. So for him to actually snap at someone, let alone one of his kids, the stress must really be getting to him. Of course, knowing Izuku, that still didn't mean he would ask for any help. I'll try to talk to him later. He needs to hire help. Okako sighed, before pulling herself together and forcing a smile at Fu. Thank you for telling me this. Fu shook his head. No. Thanks for being there for Dad. It means a lot to all of us. Okako's false smile turned into a real one, and she kneeled down and hugged the zombie boy. You're welcome. Meanwhile, with Kirishima. Alright, he should be right in here. After a bit of walking, Netsu had led Kirishima to the teacher's lounge Izuku was sitting in. Please do remember that he is a guest, and you must be on your absolute best behavior. Of course. Anything else would be unmanly. Kirishima smiled and gave the principal a thumbs up. Netsu nodded and turned the doorknob, and saw Izuku sleeping soundly on the couch. It seems as if his lack of sleep has finally caught up to him. Netsu turned to Kirishima, ushering him out. Well, we should let him get his sleep. As if sensing that his desperate need for sleep might minorly inconvenience someone else, Izuku suddenly jerked upright and forced his eyes open. What? Huh? Netsu sighed, the first time Kirishima had ever seen him do something like that. Never mind then. Midoriya, someone wanted to see you. Izuku stretched a bit, taking some time to fully wake up and take in his surroundings. Why you're Kirishima. Right? Right. Are you okay, man? Kirishima could see that the guy in front of him was obviously sleep deprived. Why yeah, I'll be fine. Izuku lied. Well, I'll be on my way, Netsu told them, before turning to Kirishima. Mr. Kirishima, do remember to head back to class when this is all done. You got it, sir. Kirishima told him. Netsu nodded, and promptly left the room, closing the door behind him. Kirishima looked at Izuku and Izuku stared right back at him. There was a minute of awkward silence between the boys. Izuku just wasn't used to being social and Kirishima wasn't sure how to approach the topic he wanted to talk about. So do you wanna sit down? Izuku eventually asked him. Oh yeah. Kirishima sat on the couch opposite to Izuku, and the awkward silence continued for half a minute until the hardening hero worked up the nerve to speak. So I wanted to ask you something about Bakugo. Almost any semblance of forced happiness drained from Izuku's face, and Kirishima started to regret coming here. If you don't want to, that's fine. Kirishima added as quickly as he could. No, it's okay. Just what do you want to ask? Izuku put his fake smile back on in an attempt to ease him. Well, I know he bullied you and everything. And I'm sorry if this seems like a stupid question. But is Bakugo. Kirishima found it was a lot harder to ask this question than he thought. A bad person. Izuku's expression shifted from tired to shocked. And once again Kirishima was left wondering if coming here was a mistake. Before he could try to amend his words though, Izuku spoke up. I honestly don't really know. Izuku sighed, his tired expression returning now, somehow making him seem even more tired than before. I've been wondering about that myself. I want to say no. I really do. But I know that I have some sort of bias that makes me want to believe him more. But every time I look at what he's done and said for the last 10 years, and I look at it logically, and I can't really dismiss the notion that he is. That was very shocking for Kirishima. Wait. You said you had a bias that made you want to believe in him? Didn't he bully you for most of your life? Yeah I guess I should explain that. Izuku said. You see, a long time ago, Bakugo was my first friend. Wait, really? Kirishima was once again taken aback by this revelation. Izuku nodded solemnly. We were friends almost since birth. Our moms were close and we lived nearby each other, so we'd meet and play together often. We were close. The best of friends. What happened? Kirishima truly didn't know what could cause a friendship to fail so badly that it would end in one of the two former friends bullying the other one for years. He got his quirk. And I didn't. Izuku answered simply. That's it? He just stopped being your friend the moment you didn't get your quirk? Kirishima knew that quirk discrimination was bad. But would it really cause a friend to turn on their other friend that quickly? It wasn't ''T. It's more complicated than that. Izuku took a moment to figure out how to explain this properly. It wasn't instant. It happened quickly, but it still took time. And honestly, I don't think it was fully Kaken's fault. When he got his quirk, he was praised constantly by the other people. Teachers, principals, students, even random people on the street sometimes. Whereas I was on the opposite end of the social ladder. Pretty much everyone hated me when they found out I was quirkless. It was like night and day between the two of us. Or rather, it was like rich and poor. So when everyone was telling him that he was absolutely amazing and that I was lower than the dirt, you can start to see how he became the way he is today. I mean yeah, but that's still wrong. Kirishima would like to think that even in that situation, he would never turn on a friend. So while it did explain some of Bakugo's behavior, it didn't really make him think much better of the explosive blonde. Yeah, but honestly I think most of the reason Kaken is the way he is because people fed him this toxic mindset his entire life, Izuku explained. And looking back All Might was kind of a part of that. Wait, All Might? Kirishima was confused. Why would All Might be part of why Bakugo's such a jerk? All Might's a real man! Kirishima. When you think of All Might, what are things you think of first? Izuku asked him. His manly smile. His manly speeches. The manly way he saves people. And that wicked awesome power he has. Kirishima answered honestly. Izuku nodded. Bakugo probably only saw that last part though. When you're taught that might makes right, and one of the most respected and worshipped people in the world is someone who's praised for their strength and literally called All Might, for him, it kind of confirmed that mentality. Kirishima pondered that for a moment. At first, it seemed almost impossible that looking up to All Might could lead to anything bad, but Izuku's explanation made sense. I also probably didn't help this, Izuku admitted sheepishly. I was one of the people who kept praising him. If the victim of your bad acts tells you everything is okay, then it makes you think your bad act wasn't all that bad. I still don't really understand you, man. It feels like you should really hate Bakugo, but it sounds like you're defending him? Kirishima honestly didn't expect the conversation to go like this. Izuku grimaced. Well, it seems like family has a bad trait of defending people who hurt us. If you ask my mom, my dad is working overseas. What actually happened is that my dad abandoned us the moment he found out we were quirkless. Kirishima flinched after hearing that. He knew that quirk discrimination caused a lot of people to turn their backs on Izuku, but for even his own father to turn his back on him? It made Kirishima debate how much he really knew about quirk discrimination. I've looked through a lot of psychology books, mostly child psychology, and thought a lot about this topic. But I can't really come to a final conclusion, Izuku admitted. Izuku gave Kirishima a very serious look. Why did you want to ask me this? Kirishima thought about how to respond. I just he seemed so upset all the time. And everyone just seems to avoid him. He's all by himself, with no friends, And the teachers don't seem to like him either. And it just seems wrong to just leave him by himself. I wanna help him but I don't know if I should. It's exactly what Izuku thought I think maybe at some point Kaken may have become a bad person but I don't think he has to stay that way. Izuku got up and gave Kirishima a serious expression. If you're asking me, I think you should help him. Be friends with him. Help change him but doing that won't be easy. Kaken is stubborn and abrasive. He won't just let you help him. You have to be determined to help him, and never give up. And you have to be able to take a few explosions too. Are you that determined to help someone that a lot of people would say doesn't deserve it? Kirishima thought about it for a moment, before giving Izuku a look that answered all of Izuku's questions. Hell yeah. If meeting you has taught me anything, just doing something or thinking some way about a person because of what everyone else says, is bullshit. And I'm gonna help make Bakugo a better person, whether he wants to be or not. Izuku's expression softened into a true, genuine smile. Thank you. There's a part of me that still remembers back when we were friends. So it makes me very happy to know he won't be alone. I'm really glad we have people like you in the hero course. Thanks, man. Kirishima took Izuku's hand and shook it. And I'm glad we have someone like you taking care of these kids. You're a real man, you know that. Izuku wasn't 100% sure what that meant, but given Kirishima's tone, he took it as a compliment. Rin. The bell rang, signifying the end of the lunch period. Ah, crap. I gotta go. Kirishima ran towards the door, opening it. But right before he left, he stopped and turned to Izuku. You know man, if you ever need a break, I'd be happy to help you out. Taking care of all those kids by yourself has to be hard. Izuku did what he normally did. He smiled and lied through his teeth. I'm fine. Alright, and that's the end of the UA arc. Chapter 43. MCU Tier List Warning. This chapter contains spoilers for the MCU also. This is the last chance to submit questions for the Q&A happening next chapter. Yeah, remember that. There is also one more thing I want you guys to decide on. Kind of like a vote. It's at the author's note at the end, so stick around. Lastly, the opinions the characters give in these chapters are the opinions of the characters, and not myself. Alright, let's begin. Hello? Is this on? Kiba asked the camera. It is? Fantastic. Hello, my loyal subjects. Today we're going to try something different. Something different. What could that mean? Please tell us, oh great and mighty Kiba. Today we will be doing a tier list of sorts. Of the Marvel movies Phase 1, 2, and 3. Kiba revealed, showing the audience the list. I wanted to do all the movies, but that would take too much of my time. On Kiba's monitor was a tier list. At the top was the tier royal. Below that was outstanding. Below that was entertaining. Below that was merely fine. Below that was not worth my time. And below that was should be cast into the abyss. And below that was all the Marvel movies from Hulk to Spider-Man Far From Home. Now, just seeing my opinion on such films would be more than enough. I've heard that having two people discuss such things is more enlightening and entertaining, Kiba explained. And as such, Fu will also be joining us. Fu appeared on the other screen. With a tier list identical to Kiba's. Hi. Yay, more Fu. And he's not gonna get dismembered this time. Queen Crimson, all you. You don't know that. Imagine Kiba disagrees with him so much she goes over there and rips his head off. I mean, that has happened, Fu commented. But she's become less bratty since then, so we don't have to worry about that. Wait, what do you mean less bratty? Kiba shouted in outrage. Anyway, let's start with Hulk, Fu said as he moved on. It apostrophe s ... okay. Fu put it in merely fine. It's only interesting when Hulk is on the screen. Which is way too little. Fu critiqued. I agree. Kiba said, putting the movie in the same place. Can we talk about the Hulk for a second? He is horribly wasted as a side character in these movies. You have this huge, amazing rage monster that they rarely use through phases 1-3. And it took them far too long to make a sequel. Why? Rights issues. Rights issues. Rights issues. Issues rights. Apparently it's because of rights issues. Fu pointed out. I guess this is back when Disney didn't own basically everything. Ugh. Stupid stuffy people in suits making things complicated. Kiba huffed. So moving on before Kiba goes on to another rant. Iron Man. Fu continued. Fu proceeded to move Iron Man to entertaining. Iron Man is a great movie. I probably would have put it higher if the villain wasn't '*T.dumb. What exactly was Ironmonger's plan? He was gonna take over the company by murdering someone in public in a giant robot suit. Fu summarized. And this is after he's already attacked a bunch of government agents? His plan should just be to go the run at that point. I think you're overrating it, brother. Kiba put Iron Man into the merely fine tier. Its fight scenes are also one-sided except for the last one, which is okay. Stark is fun to watch, I guess. But that's the film that started it all. Kids these days. Are you questioning the great Kiba? You dare. Moving on, Fu said. Iron Man 2. Fu moved Iron Man 2 into merely fine. Little worse than the first one. This time it has two villains. Hammer is the only one that's any real fun to watch outside of the fight scenes. Fu summarized. Once again I disagree. Kiba put Iron Man 2 into merely fine. You put it in the same tier. Fu pointed out. Yes. But I think it's a bit better. Kiba said. The fight scenes in this one were less boring. And I like War Machine's armor better than Iron Man's. And Whiplash had really cool whips. Is Kiba only gonna look at the fight scenes and cool stuff? What did you expect her to look at? I'm glad Fu is here. Oh, we're gonna get some hot takes today. Thanks. Anyway, moving on. We have Captain America: The First Avenger. Fu said. Fu then proceeded to put that movie in entertaining. This film is really good, and I really like the World War II thing. We didn't get to see him fight in the war as much, but we saw a lot of things around it. Fu explained. And the captain himself, while he is pretty simple, is fun to root for because he's such a nice guy. It's a simple movie, but a good movie. Kiba meanwhile, slid the movie into merely fine. As Fu said, it's simple. And so are the fight scenes. The shield throwing is cool. And I really like that montage of him fighting in the war. But too much talking, too much romance. And the villain's final fight was kind of dull. Cap is great. The only American we can rely on. Back when America was reliable. Going on to Thor, Fu said. Fu slid Thor right into not worth my time. It has some interesting parts. Some funny parts. But it's pretty boring. It just doesn't feel like much is happening at all. Fu explained. Kiba on the other hand slid that movie into should be cast into the abyss. This movie makes me angry. Kiba shouted. You have a god. An actual god of lightning. And what do you do with him? You take away his powers and have him be lame almost the entire movie. It's so boring I fell asleep. It has one good fight scene. And one okay fight scene. This is a terrible movie. And a terrible disappointment. Damn, she roasted that movie. Stop, it's already dead. Yeah, they really could have done something more fun with Thor. At least they got their act together with Ragnarok. Next is the Avengers. Fu continued. Fu put the first Avengers movie into the entertaining tier. It's like Captain America. Good and simple. Fu summarized. It's really fun to watch all the heroes come together and fight aliens, and sometimes each other. I think it's better than Captain America, because Loki is a better villain. I disagree, I think it's much better Captain America. Kiba placed the Avengers into the outstanding tier. It's way funnier and has more fights. And better fights too. Watching the Avengers come together to fight an entire army is amazing. The only reason it's not higher is because there are more amazing movies later. It's iconic alright. Even after all these years. The thing that showed the MCU really worked. I think it's underrated. Next up is the first movie of Phase 2, Iron Man 3, Fu announced. Fu put it in merely fine. It's an okay movie. Pretty fun. I like the parts where he had to fight people without his suit. The villain was ... meh. At least they had some okay fights. The fights were fine. I liked those armorless fights as well. And the big fight at the end was the best part. Kiba said, sliding the movie into the same tier. Remember back when people were mad about the Mandarin thing? Dude, that was literally hundreds of years ago. I wish the Iron Man trilogy was better. The next one is ... Thor ... The Dark World. Fu sighed. Kiba ... Let's not waste time here. Both of them immediately moved it to should be cast into the Abyss tier. It's so boring, I'm not even going to waste my breath. Kiba scoffed. Ouch. Sounds about right. Worst Marvel movie ever. Moving from a bad sequel to a good one, Captain America the Winter Soldier, Fu announced. Kiba slid it into roll immediately. This was fantastic. The boat scene where he fought Batroc. The elevator fight. The bridge fight. And the final fight with the Winter Soldier. All of them were brilliant. Fu slid it up to outstanding. This one was really good. Winter Soldier is a great villain. If I was capable of feeling fear, I probably would have been afraid of him. This is also the movie that made me really like Captain America. He's everything a hero should be. No matter who's in his way, if they're doing something bad, Captain America will fight them ... even if he has to fight America. Fu explained. Also, I have a feeling that this is one of those movies I don't fully understand, and when I get older it might get better or worse. What's there to understand? It's about superheroes fighting supervillains. Kiba scoffed. Don't overthink things, brother. Oh, Kiba. Didn't like the first one so much. Second one was amazing. Cap still has one of the best trilogies. Now for the weird one. Guardians of the Galaxy. Fu continued. Fu proceeded to put this film in entertaining. It had some nice music. The characters were likable. And it was very funny. But the villain was boring. And the fight scenes were just okay. Yeah, I wish Groot had better fights in this movie. Kiba slid the movie into merely fine. The only real part one liked was the comedy. The characters were funny enough to keep this interesting. Drax is the best though. Rip Groot. He comes back. Does he? Or is it clone Groot? Apparently, it is some kind of clone or offspring. In my head canon, Groot is still Groot. Fu got ready to continue, but Kiba suddenly jumped in. Age of Ultron is in royal tier. And anyone who wants to say otherwise can fight me. Kiba challenged. Kiba, remember that everyone can have their own opinions. Fu repeated what Izuku had told Kiba countless times. Yes, everyone can have their wrong opinions. Kiba scoffed. I hear all this stuff about how Age of Ultron is the worst Avengers movie, and how people think the first one was better. But Age of Ultron is better in every way. Just the opening fight is better than any fight in the first movie. And Hulk vs Iron Man is one of the most amazing fights in these three phases. Ultron is a great villain, that's more entertaining than any of the villains before him. It's going in royal. Fu sighed and slid the movie into entertaining. Betrayal. Kiba shouted. I agree with pretty much everything Kiba said, but Quicksilver's death was stupid, Fu explained. Kiba opened her mouth to object. But then she closed it, and thought about it a bit, before crossing her arms together and pouting. Fine. I'll accept it. But I'm keeping it in royal. Well, it did have some good fights. Ultron was nothing like he was in the comics. Who cares, lol. I was just really disappointed they didn't do much with Quicksilver. Alright, Before Kiba starts breaking things, let's move on to Ant-Man, Fu said. Kiba once again took the lead here and put the movie into royal. Ant-Man is one of the best Avengers. Kiba stated. He's just a really nice guy, trying to be a good dad. And the fights in this movie were a lot better than I thought they would be. The shrinking was a lot cooler than I expected it to be. And it only gets better in the future. Fu nodded as he slid it into outstanding. I don't think people understand how great it is to have a loving dad until their own parents abandon them. Ant-Man is my favorite Avenger as well. He's funny, smart, his powers are interesting, and he's a great dad. Hank Pym is also a good character. He's still trying to be a good dad, but he's not as good at it as Scott. The only thing that makes this movie less good is Yellow Jacket. He's not really a good villain until the end of the movie when he puts on the suit. Man, this one was personal for them, huh? Never really thought of it that way. Scott's great. His powers don't make any sense though. Neither do ours. Now for the last Steve Rogers Captain American film, Captain America Civil War, Fu announced. Fu promptly put the movie into outstanding. This movie is great. Looking back, I can see how things led up to this. Steve and Tony were kinda always opposites to each other. And when superheroes have different opinions to one another, there is only one thing they can do. Fu said. They fight. Kiba shouted as she put it into royal. So much fighting. And with all the Avengers. Except Hulk and Thor, which is a shame, but that airport battle was one of the best fights in the 3 phases. The only reason I didn't put it higher is because Zemo's plan is a little confusing, and Vision wasn't really used as much as he should have been, Fu explained. Pa. Who cares? It's an amazing action-filled movie from beginning to end. Kiba stated. And that's all I care about. Yeah, Vision wasn't done justice for a while. Wish Hulk and Thor were in it. Airport scene alone puts it in outstanding. Spider-Man. You didn't mention Spider-Man. They'll get to him. Now for Doctor Strange. Fu continued. Fu slid the movie into merely fine. It's a weird movie, Fu admitted. But looking past that, it's pretty much just like the Iron Man movie, but with magic. And the same uninteresting villain. Or villains, I guess. Kiba seemed conflicted. This movie is truly strange. Its fights are interesting. And the way the Doctor defeats such a powerful entity is truly creative. Everything is just strange. For perplexing me, and keeping from being bored, I will put it into entertaining. It's Iron Man. On drugs. It really is. At least the magic looks cool. Guardians of the Galaxy 2, Fu said. Kiba put the movie into outstanding. By far an improvement to the first one. Funnier than the last one by far. And all the amazing colors and backgrounds, it really makes me feel as if I've left Earth behind. And the fight scenes, while there are less of them than I'd like, are more creative and amusing to watch. Kiba said, and I cannot express how much joy I had watching Ego meet his end. Yeah, as it turns out, watching a bad parent get what he deserves is satisfying for us. Who knew? Fu said sarcastically, as he moved the move into outstanding. As Kiba says, the background, coloring, and designs make the most of the space thing. And I really like it. And I felt something for Star-Lord. My dad didn't kill my mom, but I can know what it's like to realize that your parents is a terrible person. That one hit me. Can we find Fu's parents? And see if they are also unkillable? Why don't we just find all their parents and do that? Stand game aura, read the room, dude. Moving on. We have the first Spider-Man movie. Spider-Man Homecoming. Fu continued. Fu and Kiba both put it into merely fine. It's passable. I feel like there could have been more cool web-slinging scenes. And definitely some cooler fights. Kiba commented. Spider-Man feels like another character that is not as powerful as he should be. Truck, who is half his age, and I've seen her fight in more impressive ways than he does. And she doesn't even have spider sense. I just really don't get teenagers. Fu shrugged. The villain is good, though. But isn't he just an evil falcon? Who Spider-Man already fought and almost beat. I feel like he shouldn't have been that hard for Spider-Man to beat. And I know he was using surprise attacks but he has a spider sense, surprise attacks shouldn't work. There's nothing really wrong with the movie, it's just fine. But it gave us the best live-action Spider-Man. Yeah, the spider sense didn't really seem to work for a while for no reason. They made the Vulture actually threatening. It deserves an outstanding for that alone. Fu didn't even try to announce the next one, as he knew what was coming. And the next one was Thor Ragnarok. Kiba shouted with pure excitement. Kiba then put that movie in the royal tier so fast she almost broke her mouse. This movie is the best movie out of all of these movies. Kiba said with a tone that left no room for argument. You said movie times. Fu pointed out. I don't care. This is what a movie about a thunder god should be like, constantly keeping me entertained with either hilarious shenanigans or amazing fights where the main weapons are lightning and fist. And this is one of Hulk's best showings. And Valkyrie is the best female character in these movies. I don't care if she's a drunk. She is awesome and can take down spaceships with her bare hands. Loki is the best he's ever been, and the get help part reminded me of something I'd do with Fu. Hela is one of the best villains ever. That part where she takes down the entire Asgardian army. After that, I asked Dad if I could use throwing swords, but he said that it was too dangerous, which I think is untrue. But then Dad had me throw a pencil and I may have accidentally impaled Fu with it, which was just bad luck, but Dad didn't believe me and said no. Anyway, those scenes that looked like moving paintings were some of the best parts, and my favorite was when Thor descended from the sky like the god he is, cloaked in lightning and death, ready to take on an army of the dead. And Kiba was about to continue but Fu cut her off. Kiba, you getting Dad's muttering habit, Fu informed her. And? Kiba raised an eyebrow. Caretaker is one of the greatest people to walk this earth. I fail to see how picking up habits from him could be a bad thing. And these people should feel honored to hear my voice, so I doubt they'll complain. It's true. We won't. It's so cute. She called him Dad instead of caretaker. Alright. Well, I really like this movie too. Kiba basically said everything that can really be said here. So let's move on. Fu said as he put Thor Ragnarok into royal. So now we have Black Panther. Kiba moved the movie into outstanding. This movie was very entertaining. It starts off with Black Panther striking fear into the hearts of criminals. Black Panther is incredibly striking throughout the movie, and he's not the only one. It's as if being Wakandan instantly makes you a fierce fighter. And Wakanda itself is still one of the most interesting places in the MCU. Killmonger is a worthy opponent, however, and their conflict makes for a very amusing spectacle. Also, war rhinos. Those were an excellent touch. Wakanda forever, Fu said, as he slid the movie into outstanding. Wakanda forever. Wakanda forever. Wakanda forever. Wakanda forever. Continuing the streak of excellence, Avengers Infinity War. Kiba introduced. Kiba quickly put the movie into royal. The only movie out of all of these that could even compete with Thor Ragnarok. A movie worthy of its epic title, as it has battles spanning across the universe, featuring almost every hero in the MCU at this point. Except for Ant-Man, unfortunately. And Hawkeye. But aside from those two, everyone else gets amazing fights and action. Except for the Hulk. Kiba sighed in annoyance. Once again, they do injustice towards the Hulk. He has one fight, which he definitely should have won, but didn't, and then we don't see him for the rest of the film. Kiba reviewed. Thanos is a truly fearsome foe, and with his Infinity Gauntlet, he managed to outmatch the heroes. Even if only temporarily. Which was quite surprising. Overall, a very excellent film with a few small disappointments. While it is disappointing that Ant-Man doesn't appear, And Hawkeye too. Overall it is a very good movie. A sad one too. I almost felt something when Gamora, Loki, and Vision died. Not when the snap happened because I already knew they would come back. But it was shocking to see the villain win in a movie. Fu said he put the movie into Royal. What do you expect? He is inevitable. This does put a smile on my face. Reality is often disappointing. But not this time. Perfectly balanced. As all things should be. Insert Infinity War meme here. Now we move on to yet another excellent movie, Ant-Man and the Wasp. Kiba said eagerly. As one might predict by her tone, Kiba put the movie right into Royal. Ant-Man continues being my favorite Avenger. Reminding much of Caretaker in some moments. And the action here far surpasses the first film. Wasp rivals Valkyrie for my favorite female character, however, she can be a bit of a stick in the mud, at times. Ghost was an interesting antagonist. I like how different her powers were from our heroes. And I still do love those three morons that follow Ant-Man around. Their jests amuse me. And the ending was extremely satisfying. Kiba said. Until it wasn't. Fu pointed out. But ignoring that, I can agree with what Kiba says. I'm not a fan of that one guy Sonny ... something I think. He was only here to give punching bags for everyone. But other than that it's a great movie. Fu slid it into Royal. Scott Lang for life. Wasp for life. Meh. Underrated. Now on to ... wait ... did we ... forget to watch Captain Marvel? Fu asked as he looked at the next movie. What are you ... oh. Kiba looked at what Fu was talking about and saw that they had in fact missed Captain Marvel ... so that's why her appearance in Endgame seemed weird. Fu deadpan ... well this is unfortunate. Oh well, moving on. Kiba sighed. On to Avengers Endgame. Neither Fu nor Kiba actually placed it immediately. Rather it looked like they took time to try and figure out where it should go. This movie for most of it was only merely fine, until the last parts which make me want to put it in Royal. Kiba commented as she made an I'm thinking face. I thought it was an entertaining for a while. But I agree the final battle may have brought it up to Royal. Fu said. So actually I'm just going to make things similar and just put it in Royal. Agreed, Kiba said as she also placed that movie in the top tier. Captain America using Mjolnir makes up for half of the talking scenes. And the Avengers Assemble moment made up for the rest of them. And the rest of that battle made up for what they did to Hulk ... Overall the good far outweighs the bad. The part where Captain America faces against Thanos' army, with that one shot that makes it completely hopeless but he still gets up to fight anyway. Fu described. And the endings for both Iron Man and Captain America would be very heartwarming if I could properly feel emotions. As someone who can properly feel emotions, I can confirm that Captain America's ending was very emotionally satisfying. He fought for the universe and now he can finally be happy. Iron Man should have got the same ending but, no. He died instead. Kiba crossed her arms and pouted. His poor daughter now doesn't have a father. That poor little girl. At least she still has one living parent. One more than we had when our parents snapped. Fu quipped. Kiba gagged. Fu, that was both terrible and in poor taste. Where on earth did you get that? I take that as an insult, Fu said in his monotone. And since you want to go there. When Iron Man died, Kiba started crying and saying no, don't you dare. You have a daughter to go home to. You can't die. And Dad had to comfort her for the fun. Fu didn't get any further as in the time it took him to say all that, Kiba had run over to him, and ripped his head off, causing a fountain of blood to spray from his neck stump until Kiba kicked his body off the chair and out of the side of the camera. Welp. Never mind. She almost did it. She almost made it. It was so close. Poor Fu. Queen Crimson, nice. There were a few seconds of silence, as Kiba made her way back to her chair, The only noise was the gushing of Fu's blood off-screen. Eventually, Kiba got back on camera and settled back down. "My apologies, it appears a villain broke into our house and ripped my brother's head off. I took care of that, so don't worry. And also please ignore the obvious lies my brother was spewing beforehand. Anyway, Spider-Man Far From Home. Great movie. Didn't like teen romance. Better action than the first one. And the villains were amazing. This movie goes into outstanding. Anyway, remember the Q&A is tomorrow, don't miss it. Bye." And with that, Kiba promptly ended the stream. Chapter 44. It was about the time. The stream had already started, however, the camera wasn't turned on. And so the viewers waited anxiously for their queen to arrive. And then, the real show started. "Greetings my faithful servants," Kiba introduced. The camera layout was different from her normal one. This time it was more panned out, and farther away, although the reason for this was obvious, as instead of just showing Kiba and perhaps one other person, this time there were 9. Izuku, Kiba, Fu, Samson, Yonda, Shraku, Kyodon and Netsu were all sitting at one of the big tables in the cafeteria. Izuku having a computer in front of him, showing that he was the one setting up and controlling the stream. Izuku was also wearing a green and purple cloak, one that he had Shraku make for him, that allowed him to hide his face. "Oh my god, it's the whole family." "Wait, it's not the whole family, there are a few missing." "Where is Kai?" "Who cares? So many cute kids." "Who is that guy in the cloak?" "A servant? Maybe an older brother? Maybe he's the mysterious caretaker?" "Nah, he looks too young. Maybe he's just short." "You think caretaker is that big guy in the cloak? The guy that looks like he's made of moss?" "I don't know. Why is one of them on fire? Why wouldn't one of them be on fire?" "As you all know, today is the family Q&A I have been preparing for quite some time," Kiba announced, before motioning out towards her family. "As such, I have gathered as much as my family as I could. Unfortunately, some are rather averse to the camera, and will not be joining us. But I did manage to finally convince Caretaker to show himself." Kiba pointed at Izuku. "My servants, this man is Caretaker. The one who made all of this possible. Feel grateful for his time. It is precious after all." "Wait, that is Caretaker. He's so small. He looks like a teenager. I can't see his face." "Not what I was expecting. Big things come in small packages. I'm going to assume you didn't mean that, in the perverted sense." "Alien Queen, hey guys. It's me, Mina. Can't wait for the questions." Hey. Izuku timidly introduced himself. "Thank you all for watching Kiba's streams. She takes a lot of pride in her viewership. And yeah, I am a bit young. Caretaker's age doesn't really matter. So let's not waste time discussing it." Kiba dismissed. "Now to introduce you to my siblings." Kiba motioned towards Fu, Samson, and Shraku. "You all should already be familiar with these 3. My right hand Fu and Kiba, my arch-rival Samson, and my other rival Shraku. Please stop calling me that." Shraku sighed in annoyance. "Just because I'm strong doesn't mean I want to fight." It wasn't that Shraku was averse to fighting. She would if she felt like it. But because of her strength, Kiba viewed her as a rival, and would challenge her to contests and fights, far more often than she cared for. Noted and ignored. Now allow me to introduce those who you all may be less familiar. Kiba announced. "Hi. I'm Kesseki. But don't call me that. Call me K. Don't make that me snake." Giggled. Everyone but Izuku and Netsu proceeded to groan at her terrible joke. Even Deku. And, while Izuku was holding in a groan, Netsu was giggling a bit. "Hey. Me snake. Oh god no. Oh no," she puns. "Why have I been hurt in such a way? It wasn't that bad." "Yes, it was. Her snakes are so cute." Oh, my turn. I'm Netsu. My quirk is Flame Dominance. It lets me control fire. And I'm gonna be the #1 hero. Netsu said with enthusiasm. Oh, it's like a little Endeavor. But happy. If he's happy then he's not like Endeavor. Sorry, little one, but that position belongs to Lady Kiba. Ha. We'll see about that. Kiba smirked at Netsu, who smirked back. You two, behave, Izuku told the two of them, causing them to settle back down. Oh man, Daddy stepped in. I still can't believe he's their dad. Alien Queen, me neither. Fuhai, it's pretty hard to believe. Why yeah. Izuku sighed, before looking over to Yonda and Izuku. Kiba, shouldn't you introduce them? Oh, right. Thank you, caretaker. Kiba quickly cleared her throat. Those two are Yonda and Izuku. They're mute ... kind of. Izuku is fully mute, but Yonda can speak telepathically. Unfortunately, you can't hear it over a camera, so caretaker will be telling you what she's saying. And since Izuku can't speak, Yonda will use her mind-reading ability to speak for him, which caretaker will then say out loud. Wow, sounds complicated. Does that boy even have a mouth? That thing is a kid. He's so tall. What a cute girl. Now it's time to introduce the last person who will be joining us. Kiba said caretaker. Izuku nodded and started pressing a few keys on the computer. Then, in the corner of the screen, another screen popped up, showing a camera feed of Kai in his room. Kai, you're on, Izuku said into the laptop's microphone. I am. Hello everyone. Kai greeted. Kai. He is here. I guess he would have been a bit too big to be with everyone else. Big boy. Biggest boy. Kai was a bit too big to be with us, so caretaker came up with this idea, Kiba explained. Once again, remember to give him your thanks, there's really no need. Izuku blushed under his hood. Thank you, caretaker. Thank oh great caretaker for delivering this unto us. Red Riot, thanks, bro. Alien Queen, thanks Midori. Your Avity, yes there is a need. Izuku blushed even more and hid his face even more. Now. This has gone on long enough. Let us move on to the questions. Kiba announced impatiently. Now, naturally I will not be able to answer all your questions. Caretaker will be selecting them, so please try to gain his attention if you'd like your question to be answered. Now. Begin. Immediately after Kiba said that, questions started flooding in, and Izuku was having a hard time keeping up with everything. Alright ... let's start with ... this. What are all of your quirks? Izuku asked. A simple question to start with. My quirk is Blood Boost. When the life juice of my victims flows through my fangs, my body regains its true power and allows me to Kiba got cut off. Blood Boost allows her to enhance her strength, speed, and toughness whenever she consumes blood. The more she exerts herself, the faster her blood reserves drain. If she doesn't drink enough blood, she dies. Fu explained, much to Kiba's annoyance. Wait, she just dies? I would gladly give all my blood to Lady Kiba. Same. Alien Queen, same. Invisible Girl, same. Can I just give like ... a quarter of my blood? No. All your blood. Hey. Kiba protested. Kiba, we have a lot of questions, so try to answer these as quickly as possible, Izuku told her. Kiba folded her arms and pouted. Fine. My quirk lets me regenerate from any injury, so long as I've eaten enough meat. If I'm low on meat, then I'll go into a zombie-like rampage, and try to eat any meat I see. Fu explained. Including human meat. Oh wow, he really is a zombie. Oh, so that's why he's dangerous. At first, I didn't think a regeneration quirk was all that problematic, but the problem isn't the regeneration, it's the eating people part. Wait, does that mean Fu could die if he doesn't eat enough? My quirk also makes me immune to a lot of things like poisons and most mental quirks. Fu continued. And it makes me immune to pain ... and feelings ... kind of. I can taste anything either. Which sucks.
Cause food is great. Netsu added. Oh. My quirk lets me control fire. But it's like ... really strong. So it's hard to control. Which is why I'm on fire. Because I can't turn it off. Wait, so he's always on fire? Kinda basic. Simple but effective. Shitototoraki, trust me. He's plenty powerful. My quirk makes my body acid. Samson jumped in. Like an upgraded sludge villain. Goodness, she is overpowered. Can't even hit her. Poor Kiba. My turn. My quirk turns people to stone when they look at my eyes. Kegerly explained. And it gives me snakes for hair. I don't know why. But I love them. Too bright. Too pure. Sunshine snake child. So that's why she's wearing the thing on her face. Would that work through screens? I don't think so. No. Quirk doesn't work through screens, Izuku explained. He thought people might be afraid of being turned to stone, so he decided to put those fears to rest before it started hurting the viewership. "K, why don't you go next?" "Okay. Dad. My quirk makes me ... me." Kai explained simply. Well, that was quick. To be fair, it's pretty easy to figure out what his quirk is. Don't forget about the poison blood. Fu reminded him. Oh right. My blood is poison. Kai had honestly forgotten about that part. Wait, what? Like the actual Hydra? I'll go next. My quirk is Spider Queen. It gives me all the abilities of a spider. And it lets me command spiders. Shraku explained, allowing a spider to crawl up her arm to demonstrate. She really is Muffet. Insert spider dance. Spider Girl. The last two are Deku and Yonda, Izuku explained on their behalf. Deku's quirk, on top of mutating him to look the way he does, also makes it so that way if you touch him while feeling any significant amount of fear, you will combust into flames. Oh. That explains why he looks like that. Now that all makes sense. And Yonda's quirk basically replaces all her auditory sense with telepathic abilities. Izuku continued. Instead of speaking, she can communicate with people telepathically. And instead of hearing people's voices, she can hear their thoughts. Oh, so there is like, no privacy around her. So she's kinda deaf but not, really? Secrets be gone. Relationships are gonna be hard for her in the future. That last comment got Izuku thinking. Oh my god, it will be hard for her to sustain a relationship in the future ... Well, I guess I just have to hope that all works out. Caretaker. Kiba shouted, snapping Izuku out of his thoughts. Please move on to the next question. Sorry. Izuku apologized, before quickly looking through the chat for more questions. Alright, so ... What is your favorite hairstyle? Snake style? Frowned for a moment. Just this. I can't have a snake style because forcing my snakes to stay still in a style for so long hurts them. Don't despair, sister, you only need the one hairstyle to look beautiful, Kiba told her while petting one of her snakes. All you. Wholesome queen. Wholesome, queens. Press X to stand. XXXXXX. Izuku smiled and made a note to praise Kiba for this later before he dived back into the chat for questions. Okay. Shraku, is it true you make clothes for everyone in the house, and that you make them out of your silk? Yes. Shraku answered proudly, before thinking about it for a moment and frowning. Well. Not everyone. Samson refuses to wear clothing, and I haven't met Fukanoko, so I can't make clothing for her. I also can't make clothing for Netsu because he's always on fire. I can't make Kyozai clothes either because he's inside Fu. I say making clothes for me counts as making it for both of us, Fu added. Okay then. The only people I haven't made clothes for are Samson, Netsu, Fukanoko, and Kai. But I'm working on making Kai something. Shraku continued. Oh. What is it? Kai asked, shaking his head in excitement. You'll have to wait and see, Shraku said,
crossing her arms with a very satisfied smile on her face. Is it a scarf? How much silk would that take? All their clothes come from her butt. Can Kai wear pants? A neck sock? Izuku looked, once more, for a new question. Netsu. Since you're always on fire, do you ever take a bath? Is the only time you're not on fire is when you're fully submerged in water? Nope. Whenever I go into water it all just turns to steam. Netsu explained. But I don't need to take a bath, because I'm always on fire, no germs can get on me. Still is kinda gross, Shraku muttered. Probably always smells like fire. Toasty. Germs getting fired. Okay, next one. Oh my queen of darkness, I must ask, will you still stream for us slowly peons while still being a pro hero? Izuku repeated one of the questions. HMPH. Of course. Did you think I would continue doing this if I didn't find it amusing? Kiba asked haughtily. I do this for my amusement, not yours. So of course I'll be continuing this for quite some time. So long as you all continue to entertain me. Of course, Lady Kiba. We live to serve you. Thank you, Lady Kiba. Hail Lady Kiba. And long may she stream. Hail. 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 Izuku smiled at how excited the chat got. All of them were eager to watch his daughter's antics. All of them loved her. He was so glad that she could finally get the affection she deserved. There were, of course, a few detractors. But he quickly blocked them before the kids ever got to see them. Alright, this one is for Yonda. I know this may seem dumb since you can read minds, but do you know sign language? I know it's redundant but I'm just curious. Izuku read. Yonda shook her head. There were a few moments of silence as Yonda's mouth moved but nothing came out. The viewers realized that she was giving a response, they just couldn't hear it. Yonda says that it's pointless to learn sign language, Izuku explained. Yeah, it does seem like a lot of work to do something she could ultimately do with her quirk. Not everyone even knows sign language. She doesn't even need to use it to talk to other deaf people. Okay, new question for Samson. How do you feel about being Kiba's rival? And have you ever lost to Kiba? Izuku asked. Samson looked at Kiba and smirked. Nope. Never. Kiba's strong. She's a good rival. And she's hard to fight. But she can't hurt Samson. So I always win. HMPH. Kiba pouted and looked away from Samson's smug look. Her quirk acts as a counter to mine, that's all. One day I will overcome this obstacle, and triumph over her. Mark my words. Samson just continued to look smug. One day, my lady. One day. I really don't see how someone with a quirk that lets them punch really hard beat a person who is immune to punching. All she has to do is be as strong as All Might and do what he did to the sludge villain. You can do it, Lady Kiba. Red Riot. Yeah, she can. Trust me, she hits hard. Dark Shadow can affirm. She hits like a truck. No, 20 trucks. Tsukigami, she still has a long way to go before she gets this strong. Okay, next question. Izuku searched for a new question. K. Do you ever go on casual flights around the area for fun, or does caretaker not let you do that because it could cause a panic? Dad, let's fly. I even have this special thing that opens up my roof and lets me fly out. Kai explained enthusiastically. I can only fly around the forest, but it's fine. It's still fun. I take my brothers and sisters with me sometimes. Yeah, flying around with Kai is a blast. Netsu spoke up, pumping his fist to show his excitement. He's a bit slow sometimes, but he's so big that it's kinda fun to fly around him and between his heads. Although you do crash into him a lot. Kiba pointed out smugly. I also like to fly with them on my manticore. We're thinking of making some special games we can play in the sky together. Quidditch. Imagine just being able to casually say have a manticore. Imagine just casually being able to go flying. God, I wish I could do that. Your Avity, one day. One day I'll be able to fly. Okay, next one is about Deku. Izuku, is your size difficult to deal with sometimes, and how do you feel about being so much taller than everyone else except Kai? Izuku asked. There was a bit of silence as Izuku had to think out his answer, and then Yonda had to say it with her telepathic ability. Okay, so Izuku says that it's weird. It's weird to see people so short and think that they're the same age or older than him. It's actually the same with Kai. Seeing something so big and knowing that it's close to his age is kinda freaky. Izuku explained. I know, right? When I look at Kai I think he's some ancient monster. But he's just like us. Netsu said. It is kinda weird. But everything in this house is weird. Fu shrugged. Being abnormal simply means you're better than normal, Kiba stated proudly. That is a positive way to look at it, Izuku said. Truth. Alien Queen, yeah. That's the way Lady Kiba. She has blessed us with such wise words. She truly is a queen. Invisible, girl, I love you, Kiba. Fuhai, honestly not a bad way of thinking. Okay, next question. Caretaker, do you have a favorite child? If not, who is the easiest to take care of? Izuku read out the question. Well, I don't have a favorite child. I love all of them equally, regardless of how much trouble they can cause at times. All the children then proceeded to look directly at Kiba when he said that. Kiba squinted at them with suspicion. Are you all trying to imply that I am the most difficult to care for? Yes, said all the kids, including Yonda, although the viewers couldn't hear it. No one here has broken as many things in this house as you, Shruku told her. Not even the time me and Samson destroyed some entire rooms. And if Fu weren't Fu, you would have killed him a long time ago. That's not even mentioning that out of everyone, despite your quirk, you somehow managed to hurt yourself more than anyone else, Fu added. Well, it's not my fault. My power is just so immense that sometimes I can't control it, and things like that happen. Kiba defended herself. All the kids gave her looks that showed they weren't buying it, and so Izuku decided to step in. I haven't really thought of who is easiest to take care of, Izuku said out loud. I'd have to say Yami. Most of the others can occasionally cause issues with their quirks, but he's actually been nothing but helpful. What about Eri? Asked with a cute head tilt. Well, I love Eri, but Izuku knew Eri was watching. And so he didn't want to say, she could accidentally kill me if I'm not careful while helping her train her quirk. Her quirk can be somewhat difficult to handle at times. Yeah, I guess the kid who can make an army for you would be the most inherently useful. You think? Imagine having a demon wolf help carry your bags. Kiba's worth the trouble. Alien Queen, hard agree. Invisible Girl, hard agree. Alright. Izuku dived back into the chat. Next question. Chapter 45. Okay, so in the last chapter, it was supposed to be from the perspective of the viewers watching Kiba's stream. So you couldn't hear Yonda. However, I kinda regret that a bit, so for this, you will see what she's saying to everyone, but of course, the people watching the stream in universe won't. Alright, next question. Izuku moved on. As Izuku looked through the chat, there were a couple questions that kept popping up. Such as, people asking about his age and about his own quirk. These questions he didn't have any intention of answering. However, one question he wasn't sure about that kept popping up was this. What were your lives like before getting adopted? This was a very loaded question. However, what kept Izuku from dismissing it outright, was the fact that kids like Eri and Kyoko weren't present. Most of the kids here had pretty much accepted their pasts and were willing to move past them. With the exception of Yonda, but he could always just not have her answer. Caretaker. Kiba once again snapped Izuku back into reality. You froze again. Oh right, sorry. Izuku quickly apologized, before looking back at the chat to see the question kept popping up. He took a few more seconds to decide whether or not to ask it, and in the end, he thought that leaving it to the children was the best way to go about it. So you kids don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but what were your lives like before I adopted you? That question had varying reactions. Kei, Shruku, Atoko, and Netsu didn't have any notable reactions. If anything, they seemed a little confused as to why anyone would want to know about that. Kiba also seemed confused, and a little upset and uncomfortable. But not overly so. Fu kept his typical deadpan expression. To be expected. Sansen, for just a second, actually froze, before she started moving again, and even then she looked a bit less ecstatic. Seemed unaffected. About what Izuku expected from her. Yonda on the other hand was just sad. The look of sadness on her face made Izuku regret asking it almost immediately. Why do I have the feeling they have a range of backstories that go from bad to worse? I feel bad for asking. Oof. Like I said, none of you have to answer if you don't want to. Izuku reiterated. I'll answer, spoke up, before looking at the camera. I don't remember much of my life before my quirk, but I think it was good. But after I got my quirk the people taking care of me didn't want me anymore, because my quirk was a problem. So they threw me out of the house and told me to never come back. Fucking shitty parents. God damn it, I hate people sometimes. Oh, this is taking a dark turn. We asked for it. Red Riot, not manly. If you have a kid, then you have to take responsibility. You can't just kick him out when things get hard, and if you are gonna give them up, give them to an orphanage or something. Don't just leave them out on the streets. After that, I lived on the streets for a while. I can't control my quirk, so a bunch of accidents kept happening and I turned people to stone when I didn't mean to. Continued in a somber tone. And people kept calling me a monster, and said that I was hideous, and they said lots of mean things. People are the worst. How is it that kids like this always end up surrounded by terrible people? Dust to dust, because there is an abundance of terrible people. Why didn't the heroes help? Queen Crimson, what a silly question. Heroes don't help with things like this. Silly. Blood curdle, yeah. Doesn't give them any glory. And then after that, a bad man found me. And kidnapped me. Revealed. You could now see a bit of the pain on her face, as she relieved some bad memories, although she still seemed mostly okay considering what she was talking about. He kept me locked in a cage with a blindfold on, and took me out so he could steal from places. He would make me use my quirk to turn everyone to stone, and if I tried to close my eyes he would hit me until I opened them. What the fuck? I'm gonna be sick. Oh. Alien Queen. I think I want to vomit. That is disgusting. Invisible Girl, that's low even for a villain. You're Avity, cute poor sweet girl. I'm so sorry. But, then everything got better. Because one day, Dad took him down and rescued me. K's expression brightened up significantly, and she smiled brightly at the camera. Dad knocked him out, stone cold, and went to untie me. But he accidentally looked at my eyes and turned to stone. Sorry, Dad. Izuku smiled and walked over to her, giving her a quirk hug to reassure her. It's fine. It wasn't your fault. None of that was. You didn't choose your quirk. K's smile widened even further, and she hugged her father back. All you. Alien Queen, all you. Invisible Girl, all you. Queen Crimson, all you. Izuku returned to his seat, and continued her story. When he went back to normal, he adopted me. Which was the best day ever. I got a new dad. I got a new little sister. I got to live in a house again and I didn't need to eat garbage anymore. It's so bittersweet to see how happy she is when she says she didn't need to eat garbage anymore. Good on you, caretaker. Shitoto Toraki, good job, Midoriya. This world needs more good parents. Red Riot, he saved her himself and took her in even after she turned him to stone. Now that's manly. Blood curdle, that's what a true hero does. That's such a sad story. So glad it had a happy ending. Creati, I still struggle with the fact that a parent actually condemned the child to such a fate. Alien Queen, we stand Midoriya. Especially your Avity, Mina. Invisible Girl, Stan. Poor girl. I can't imagine how hard that must have been. Well, on the bright side, she seems to be doing okay now. Was ready to let her other siblings tell their stories, but when she looked around she saw that her story had a serious effect on her siblings. Fu's expression was mostly neutral, but there was a bit of anger in his eyes. Just a bit, but even that was a lot for someone like Fu. Kiba and Netsu looked furious. Like they wanted to hunt down and destroy the people who gave their sister such a hard time. Yonda, and Shruku were actually crying. Samson and Deku ... Well, it was hard to tell what they were feeling just looking at their expression, but they certainly didn't seem happy. Things were bad, but ... They're not bad anymore. I have a great family now with lots of brothers and sisters. And they're all really nice, said happily, looking around at her siblings with a huge smile on her face. Trying to reassure her siblings. So I don't really care about all that bad stuff anymore. Because now I'm happy and everything's going to be fine. Because you guys rock. Such a precious ball of sunshine. Protect. I will guard that smile with my life. Alien Queen, I will fight for that smile. Invisible Girl, I will kill for this smile. Queen Crimson, ditto. As was winding down after finishing her story, she was suddenly hugged by Shruku. Thankfully she was gentle. I'm so sorry that happened to you, Shruku told her, some tears rolling down her face. I swear I will be the best sister I can be, so you'll never be that sad again. Yeah, and if any villain wants to try and touch you, they have to go through me. Netsu said, making a fireball rise above his hand. Of course I will protect my family with all my might, so if anyone would like to call you a monster or lay a hand on you again, I will personally rip their heads from their shoulders, Kiba promised. You don't need to do all that. Smiled and blushed. Murdering someone would make everything Dad's doing ... go up in flames. There were some groans from most of the kids, but Netsu and even Kai laughed a bit. I think you're funny, sister, Kai admitted. I don't, but for some reason, I'm laughing as I'm crying. Same man. Same makes me almost want to adopt ... almost. As someone who has adopted children, this warms my heart. Don't get all cherry yet, that was just one of their backstories. Fuck. Well, if we are sharing our backstories, then I guess I'll go next. Shruku stepped up after wiping her face clean. Mine is not very interesting. I was born with my quirk, so I always looked like this. My parents gave me up at birth and handed me over to DOC, and I was raised there for most of my life. It was ... fine, I guess. I didn't go hungry or have to eat garbage or anything. I had a comfy bed and a TV, and they even gave me some stuff to make clothes. But ... it's a lot better here. I was so alone back there. And I could never go outside. And sometimes, I would hear the people talking about me. About how ugly I was and about how they hated taking care of me. Now I have a daddy who loves me and a family that cares, and actually wears the clothes I make. Okay, not nearly as bad. Still pretty bad. Poor Spider Girl. She had a bunch of material stuff but was given no love. I'm so glad she's in a better place now. Creaty, none of this feels right. I was raised by DOC too. Kai spoke up, looking a bit sheepish. They didn't like me very much. They yelled at me a lot. They said I was such a hassle and that I should try to make their jobs easier. I didn't have a TV or anything, so I just sat around and napped a lot. It was very boring. And lonely. What shitty government agents. I know taking care of someone of that size would be hard, but that's just fucked up to talk to a kid like that. Disgusting. You're Avity, and Kai is such a sweetheart too. How could anyone talk to him like that? I was taken by DOC too. Netsu was the next to speak. But I wasn't raised there. My parents gave me up because I kept setting everything on fire by accident. I was kept in a room and they didn't let me go outside, and I couldn't fly around a lot. It was sucky. Okay so far. The least tragic backstory. Man, I'm so glad Midoriya's getting those kids out of there. Being lonely fucking sucks. Daddy. Izuku turned his head to Yonda as she heard her speaking out to him. Yes, dear? He responded. Izuku says that his backstory was like Shiraku's, where he was lonely, and the people taking care of him hated looking at him. Yonda repeated what she was told. It was very boring, and he's glad to be here instead of there. Izuku nodded to affirm what she said was true. The other children gave him sympathetic looks, and Samson actually moved over to him and wrapped around his body to hug and comfort him. As Izuku spoke what Yonda told him to the camera, Fu turned to Kiba. I think I should tell our story. What? Kiba glared at her brother. Why shouldn't I be the one to tell it? I am an amazing storyteller. Because you're overdramatic, Fu explained. Knowing you'll go on for hours about a small detail, and over-exaggerate things. By the time you finish talking, the Q&A would end. And the others wouldn't even get to speak. You've already spoken more than everyone else here combined, and you're gonna speak more after, so just let me do this. Kiba pouted heavily and crossed her arms. HMPH. Fu sighed. Please, grant me this honor, Lady Kiba, Queen of Eternal Darkness. Kiba's pout lessened, but she still didn't look particularly pleased. Fine. Thank you, Fu told her. Alright, does anyone else want to share? Izuku had just finished talking about Izuku's origin and was ready to move on. I'll go, Fu said before looking at the camera. Since me and Kiba were together for most of it, I'll be telling both of ours, but Kiba's definitely gonna chime in at some points. Of course, Kiba said with much self-assurance. Well, we've already said that our birth parents didn't want us because of our quirks. Fu reiterated. But after that, we were on the streets. And we weren't doing too well since Kiba needs blood to live and I need meat. We had to steal and attack people just to survive. She would never kill anyone but ... Kiba needed their blood. Wait. Lady Kiba attacked people. She had to survive. Queen Crimson, you gotta do what you gotta do. Alien Queen, Lady Kiba is completely innocent. If she didn't get blood she would have died. If anything we should blame the crappy parents again. Invisible Girl, yeah. The parents are the problem. Your Avity, Kiba didn't choose her quirk. She didn't have a choice. Creati, it is squarely the parents' responsibility to care for their children's needs. If they made the choice to abandon that responsibility and the child had to seek out other means of sustaining themselves, then any harm done by that child should be blamed on the parents. If they wanted to give up Kiba, then they should have given her to the DOC. Granted, it has become apparent that the DOC are not overly capable, but it would have been far better than just leaving her out on the streets. They knew Kiba needed blood to survive, so when they kicked her, they knew they were either condemning other people to get attacked by her so she could live, or they condemned their own daughter to die. Shitoto Toraki, what she said. It was really hard before I met Kiba. It's not that I felt lonely. It's that I felt nothing. And that feeling, of not feeling, is horrible. All I ever did was try to survive. But that lack of feeling ... made me kind of want to stop surviving. Fu explained. Oh god, I just thought about feeling nothing. I can't even comprehend what that would or I guess wouldn't feel like, and that is fucking terrifying. It's like thinking about not existing. You just can't. You know, I thought having Fu's quirk would be cool, but now. But when I met Kiba, she was just so ... well ... Kiba. She's just fun to be around, fun to watch. She finally made me feel things again. Fu explained. So we stayed with each other. Kiba would help me steal meat and I would give Kiba my blood. We were still homeless and had to endure all the things that went with it, but it was so much better than before. If only just because I actually wanted to survive again. And it was all thanks to Kiba. Which is why she means so much to me. Kiba meanwhile was faintly blushing from the sheer amount of genuine heartfelt praise Fu was giving her. She of course turned away from the camera in a bad attempt to hide it. Wholesome. Alien Queen, I can now die content. Invisible Girl, good because we now all have diabetes. Queen Crimson, so worth it. My teeth rotted away from all the sweetness and fell out. Who needed them? Lady Kiba is blushing. But eventually, we weren't able to get enough meat. So I went on another meat rampage. Fu continued. But I got really lucky that day. Dad, K, and Eri were selling some homemade food in the park, and the hero Fatgum just happened to be there. I bit into him, but since he's Fatgum, it didn't do any damage, and Dad gave me all the meat he had nearby to get me back to normal. Which then let me give Kiba my blood. After that, Dad took us in. And we never had to steal or worry about starving again. And I'm forever thankful for that. Fu. Izuku couldn't help but also feel a little touched. Another happy ending. Thanks, caretaker. Feed Dad, hungry boy. With most of the backstories done, Izuku looked over to the last two. Samson and Yonda. Do you two want to share, or should we move on? It's okay if you don't. There's nothing wrong with that. After a few moments of contemplation, Samson made a decision. When I was born, I accidentally killed my mama. Because I'm made of acid. And my birth daddy didn't want me. So he gave me to someone, but they didn't want me out for. So they kept malving me a wound. Then, one day they asked me to go in a drawer, and they trapped me inside. I couldn't get a what? Or malv. Then he threw me into garbage on the beach. And I was there so long. A whole year. Wait, what the fuck? Alien Queen, excuse me? She was trapped in a bottle for a whole fucking year? Winner. We have a winner for the most tragic backstory. Fuck this species. That is actually worse than prison. Netsu shuddered at the idea. A whole year. In a jar. And you couldn't move. Many of the other children grimaced at the idea as well. But then Daddy freed me. And took me in like all the other kids. Samson started moving around even more than usual, as if to show off her freedom, bouncing around everyone. Okay, so the order of most tragic backstories is: Samson at number 1. Cat, number 2. Fu at number 3. Lady Kiba at number 4. And the rest of them are pretty similar, so they can share number 5. That seems about right. So was Midoriya just going around finding small abandoned children and saying, "This is mine now"? Your Avity, it's more like small abandoned children kept finding him, and saying, "This is mine now." Izuku turned to Yonda. Yonda. You don't have to if you don't want to. Yonda had mixed feelings. On one hand, she didn't quite feel like sharing. On the other, literally, everyone else had already shared, and they had shared some pretty harsh past. Some worse than hers. She wanted to feel like she was part of the family. Father, you can tell them. Yonda knew that at the very least, she didn't need to be the one to explain it. Alright. Izuku turned to the camera. Yonda was born to neglectful parents. They fed her and gave her a place to sleep, but they barely paid any attention to her. And never really loved her. However, little did they know. Yonda was born with her quirk. At first, everyone just thought she was deaf. Until she started speaking. And when she started speaking, that's when she also revealed that her father was cheating on her mother. After that, things took a downward turn. Her parents of course got divorced after the incident, and her mother became an alcoholic and started blaming her for the divorce. And what's worse, is that she could hear every thought going through their heads while this happened, and since she can hear thoughts through walls, it was just a never-ending hate and vitriol, with a lot of it aimed at her. You know, I always knew that being able to hear people's thoughts would be more trouble than it's worth, but this is like, worst-case scenario. Should there be a license to be parents? Because this is not okay. Earphones, oh god, it's like my quirk but worse. And constantly surrounded by people who hate me. Fortunately her mother at least had the sense to hand her over to Izuku explained. And while that was better for her, it still wasn't great. Because the people who were taking care of her didn't like their jobs or her very much, and since she can hear thoughts, she could hear exactly how much they didn't like her. Yonda could remember all the cruel comments thrown her way by both her parents. Ruinous child. Life destroyer. Nosy bitch. Honestly, her time with DOC wasn't much better than before. Except she finally got to have a TV, and this was introduced to the concept of family. A real family. Something she had been robbed of, and desperately wanted. Poor Yonda. Quirks that you can't turn off really are the worst. She heard think. Can I set bad parents on fire? Is what Netsu was currently thinking. Which was concerning, but Yonda was confident that those thoughts wouldn't go anywhere. Similarly, Kiba was thinking as a hero. Can I rip bad parents apart? I wish I could make something that would symbolize family. Shruku thought, which made Yonda smile a bit. She couldn't see what people were thinking, but she imagined that she was visualizing clothing designs. Samson was currently bouncing around like a furious slime. Stupid. DOC. I'll melt him. Yonda would think that the abundance of violent thoughts among her family would be problematic. If she weren't touched that they were for her sake. I feel so bad that I feel nothing while listening to this. Wait, she can hear this. Sorry, Yonda. Muted emotions, and honestly there are so many sad backstories I can't really feel anything but a bit of sympathy. Fu apologized. Yonda gave him a look that indicated that it was fine. She wasn't looking for pity anyway. Are you alright? She heard Izuku ask her. Yonda nodded, mustering up a smile at her big green friend. If you need to talk, then we can talk. Izuku reminded her. Alright, so that's everyone, Izuku said, before looking at the clock. And it seems that time's up too. Ah. It appears that question took up quite a bit of time. So I hope you were all satisfied with it. Kiba addressed her audience. All you, it's already over. I didn't get to ask a question. I want more Kiba. Now. This will not be the last time such an event will transpire. And perhaps next time we will be joined by more of my wondrous family. Kiba said to placate the audience. Now, until next time my minions. Chapter 46. A New Face. Fukanoko was just having a normal day, minding her business while she read a nice book, with some small candies on the table in front of her. The sun was beaming through the window, and the only noise was the birds chirping outside. Overall, there was a nice, relaxing aura, filling the room. And then someone knocked on her door, and all that comfort and relaxation immediately jumped out the window to make room for fear and paranoia. Who is it? Fuka hoped it was Iri or Kormyu. It's Izuku. May I come in? Izuku asked her from the other side of the door. The fear in Fuku subsided a bit. Her interactions with Izuku were limited. He would leave her alone for the most part, only really bothering her when he came to help her with quirk training. And she had generally gotten the impression that he wasn't somebody to be feared, but since Fuka was Fuka she was still kinda afraid of him. Oh my god, what does he want? It's too early for quirk training. Maybe he's finally gotten sick of me and wants to kick me out. Fuku still wasn't super comfortable with Izuku, and so she wanted to say no. But at the same time, Izuku was the person in charge of this entire place. If I say no, what if he gets mad? Or what if he actually has something impotent to tell me, and if I don't listen I'll die? After weighing her options for a few seconds, Fuku decided it was better to just let him in. Come in. Izuku entered the room, holding a bag. Hi. Did you watch Kiba's Q&A stream? Fuka had made it a habit to frequently watch Kiba's streams. It was a great way to see more of what happened in the house, without actually leaving her room. Well, what did you think? Izuku asked her, taking a seat on the floor, a good distance away from her, as not to scare her too much.
Well, Kai is less scary than I thought he was. His quirk makes him seem a lot worse than he really is. That Izuku boy too. Fukanoko admitted sheepishly. But I guess you could say the same thing about me. Izuku nodded. That's why it's important not to judge someone based on their quirk. You always have to remember. Quirks are just based on luck. No one chooses their quirk ... But besides that, what else did you think? All those backstories were really sad. Fukanoko frowned as she remembered everyone talking about their past. She had actually teared up while watching that. Was always so happy and nice. How can she be so ... herself? Izuku smiled a bit. Is just that kind of person. She's very strong-willed, and she's not willing to let things bring her down. No matter how bad they are. It's very impressive. Yeah, she's a lot stronger than me. Stupid Fuka can't even go outside. Fuku chastised herself. Hey, what have I said about comparing yourself to others? Izuku told her. That's it's unhealthy and unfair to myself. Fuku repeated what Izuku had told her previously. That's right. Most people would react like you do after experiencing that much trauma. Is a special case. Izuku explained. Eri was a lot like you when I first met her too. As she was? Fuku's eyes widened. But she's so ... nice and brave and kind. She's nothing like Fuku. She's gotten a lot better since then, but, when I first met her, she never wanted to leave the house, Izuku explained, remembering the extremely early days of what one could consider his career, he supposes. And she would always stay by my side. Whenever someone else came to visit, she would always hide behind my leg because she was so scared of everything and everyone. Really? Fuka had always considered Eri to be like a ray of light, so to imagine that her light had once been so dim ... It was hard to imagine, and honestly, Fuka didn't want to imagine it. Right. At first, I was concerned that it would take years to get her to where she is now. But then, came into our lives. Izuku remembered the massive progress Eri made when joined their family. And she helped change Eri massively. For the first time in her life, she had someone her age to play with and talk to. And she started coming out of her shell even faster. She even agreed to go outside more. And as more kids started coming and Eri started interacting with them more, she started getting braver and happier, until she became how she is today. Izuku took a moment to let that sink in, watching Fuku's expression of thoughtful wonder. I remember when she first told me about how she came to you and befriended you. I was so proud I actually cried. Izuku almost cried again, remembering just how happy and proud he was at that moment. But he could do that later. Now he needed to focus on Fukanoko. Do you get what I'm trying to say? Izuku asked her. Fuku thought about it for a moment, before giving her response. No. Sorry. You don't need to apologize, Izuku reassured her before moving on to his point. What I'm trying to say, being around others can improve your ability to be social. Yourself included, you've already gotten a lot better at talking to people thanks to Eri and Mew. And I think you could get even better if you came out of your room and talked to people. Izuku saw Fuku's eyes widen in fear. It looked like he told her that she had some incurable disease. But he had anticipated this. And just as Fuku's mouth opened to shout some paranoid ravings, Izuku spoke first. Before you freak out, I'm not forcing you. Izuku clarified, somewhat calming her down, although she was still uneasy. It's just something I think would be good for you. Look. I know how hard it can be to face other people after being hurt all your life. Before I started taking care of Eri, I was practically dead to the world. Izuku put the bag on the floor and started rummaging through it. I got this idea from Kiba's Q&A. I wasn't ready to face the world again, so I decided to hide myself a bit. Fuku's eyes widened, as she saw Izuku pull out a hoodie from the bag, that was her size. The hoodie was mostly green, as it was modeled after a piranha plant.
And the special feature of this hoodie was that it went over the face, obscuring it like a mask, with the head of the piranha plant being where the face would be. I thought that maybe this would help you, Izuku told her, handing the hoodie over to her. Fuko took time to admire the hoodie, looking over every bit of its design. It was not a secret that she liked carnivorous plants. At least not among the few people she talked to. She had told Eri about her love of these types of plants, and she even had a Venus flytrap she named Petey, after Petey Piranha, which looked to be the inspiration for the hood. It's amazing. Izuku smiled and let out a tense breath he was holding. I'm glad you like it. I asked Eri about things that you like and asked Shruku to make them based on that. It took her a while. She said she wanted to get it perfect since it's her first gift to you. So I'm really glad you like it. Fuku kept looking at the hoodie, thinking about what Izuku had said earlier. Could I really do that? Would it be easier to talk to people if I covered my face? It actually seemed possible. At the very least she was more willing to give it a try, than just going out there with her face exposed. Although she was still very hesitant. I also got you another one in case that one gets dirty. Izuku pulled another hoodie out of the bag, this time it was bear-themed, being mostly brown like a teddy bear. That's so cute. Fuku swiftly took the second hoodie, admiring it with starry eyes. Again, I'm glad you like it. Izuku got up and made his way to the door. I'll let you think about what I told you, and if you want to do it. But just a tip. If you do want to go through with it, take Eri with you. They'll help you if you start to feel overwhelmed. And with that, Izuku exited her room, leaving Fuko to consider what he told her. She clutched the hoodie tightly, and brought it to her chest, as she made her decision. Stepping out, Shruku was just relaxing in her room, watching some TV while eating a bowl of dead spider and human finger salad. And then there was a knock on the door. I wonder who that is? Shruku thought as she swallowed down her food. Come in. The door opened, and in walked Eri and wearing gas masks. And behind them was Shruku's eyes widened, as she saw a figure wearing the piranha plant hoodie. She finished, not too long ago, Fukanoko? Fuka clung to Eri's arms. Hi. Turns out, Izuku was right. It was like she was hiding, but not really. It was just something between her and the person she was talking to. An extra barrier that made her feel just a little bit better. Of course, that didn't mean she wasn't afraid. Oh no. Another Izuku had been right about was that bringing Eri was a good idea, because if not she wouldn't be able to move around because of how much her legs were shaking. It's not just because she was now talking to someone she was unfamiliar with, it was also because said person was half spider, and eating a bowl of spiders and human fingers. Shruku noticed these obvious signs of fear and sighed disappointedly. It wasn't like she didn't expect it. While she was isolated, for most of her life, the rude comments of the DOC workers were enough to tell her that she was quite scary looking. And the looks she got while at the amusement park affirmed these suspicions. Combine that with the fact Fukanoko was just naturally afraid of everything. It was a miracle that she came to her at all. Her snacks didn't help. Hello Fuku. It's nice to finally meet you. Shruku smiled gently at the girl and waved slowly, trying not to intimidate her. Hi, Fukanoko repeated, finding it hard to say anything else at the moment. There was a few seconds of awkward silence before the other two girls figured out they were going to need to assist in continuing the conversation. Fuka wanted to say something to you. About the hoodie. Prompted. She really likes it. So, she wanted to say. Eri left the sentence unfinished, so that way Fuka could continue the rest. Thank you. Fuka managed to stutter out while bowing. Shruku was a bit stunned by the suddenness of it all and Fuku's sloppy delivery, but she quickly regained her composure. You're welcome. I'm very glad you liked it. It's the first time I ever made something like that and it took me a few attempts. So I wasn't sure how well I did. Fuko tried to think of something else to say, but everything was coming up blank. Well, looks like we're done here. Said, come on, let's go. Sorry Shraku, Fuko can only take so much. Iri apologized politely. I understand. Good luck Fuku. Shraku waved goodbye as Iri and brought her out of the room. One in the hall, Fuku started breathing heavily as she felt conflicted between relieved and afraid. On one hand, she has just talked with Shraku. On the other, Shraku was the first one she intended to talk to. There were still 8 more people she intended to talk to. Calm down Fuku. You did it. Reassured her. Don't worry. You'll get better at talking to people, even if right now, you're a bit green. Hehe. Fuko decided to ignore the pun and focus on the reassuring feeling of her friends/sisters next to her. Don't worry Fuku, none of them are really scary, Iri said as they approached the training room. Kiba and Fu should be in here. Let's talk to them both at us so you can go back to your room sooner. They approached the doors to the training room, and pressed the button to open the blast doors. And saw Kiba, standing over Fu, whose upper half was missing, presumably from being punched off, and his lower half was shooting out of a fountain of blood all around. Kyozai's tentacles were squirming out of Fu's torso stump, making the already nightmarish scene even worse. Immediately closed the door again, and just in time, as Fuko passed out from shock and fear almost as quickly, and her fear gas erupted, filling the area around them. Maybe we should take things a bit slower, suggested. Yeah. Iri agreed as she looked around the gas-filled hallway. We should make sure no one comes up here and breathes this. Right. If that happened, they wouldn't have a real gas of a time. Kpun. A grim pitch. Izuku made his way through the forest, towards the place where Yami asked him to go. He probably wants me to see some new grim. Izuku speculated. This was something that happened every now and then. Izuku had made a rule that if Yami wanted to make any new grim around the house, they would have to be approved by Izuku first, and Izuku would also say how much of one type of grim there could be around the house. Honestly, Izuku had been expecting this to happen sooner. Yami had gained a ton of negative energy from his little drive around the city. And while he had used a lot of it to make the grim for the UA exercise, apparently he had only barely used half of his negative energy storages. And so he had been doing a lot of experimenting with grim, even more than he had already been. Which Izuku found strange. When Yami first joined the family, he was very lazy. Which made sense. After living a life that was constantly about survival and vigilance, now that he could finally relax, it would make sense that he do it as much as possible. So when he suddenly started being more active and experimented with grim, it confused him a bit. Izuku reached an opening in the trees and found Yami there waiting for him. As well as 3 new grim. The first one was obviously based on an elephant. Mostly unarmored, except for a few spots on its body with some spiky bone armor, and a mask on its face. The second one was a giant ape. About 3 times the size of a gorilla, with various pieces of armors on its extremely muscled body, and of course a skull-like mask. The last one was a bit strange. It was a mostly black orb with some bits of white bone on its base, with strange spiky tentacles coming out of its bottom. Dad. Yami greeted. I have more grim. I see that. Izuku gazed at the new creations judgmentally. Already seeing various uses for each of them. Well, would you like to explain more about each one of them? Yami nodded eagerly and went over to the elephant-like one. Kiba calls this one the Goliath. I saw a video of an elephant shooting water out of its face. So I made one to water fires in the forest. Ah, very clever Yami. Izuku praised him while getting a big smile on his face. Being located so close to a forest fires were a huge concern for him. And that was even before Netsu joined the family. I guess I could put a few pools of water around the forest and have these stand by them just in case. Izuku thought aloud. Alright, I guess we could have about 20 of these. Is that too much? Yami shook his head. Still have lots of energy. Get more every day. Alright, Izuku said sheepishly. It would probably take a lot to fully drain those reserves now, I guess. Yami nodded and moved on to the gorilla. This is a Birangel. Tried to let Grim do more work, they don't have hands. This is big, strong, and has hands. Can grab things, lift things, and do a lot of work. And climbs very well. Izuku nodded as he quickly followed Yami's train of logic. Yeah, I remember you made these for the exercise at UA. I guess they could do a lot more outside of just combat. One would think having the ability to spawn a nearly endless amount of mindless minions would mean that manual labor shouldn't be a problem. And while the Grimm did help quite a bit with that, there was one big issue they tended to run into. They had no hands. When it came to human achievements, their intelligence was often given all of the credit, and not enough attention was paid to the basic ability to grab things. Having 5 fingers was very, very important. Thumbs especially. It wasn't really something people tended to pay attention to, but trying to go about your day without using your thumb would swiftly prove this point. In summary, most Grimm couldn't do a lot of different tasks, because of a lack of hands. These apes would be able to handle a lot of different tasks, although he doubted they could handle work that required a more gentle touch, given their massive hulking bodies. And of course, they also couldn't make any decisions that required any amount of brainpower. Meaning all the paperwork still fell squarely on Izuku's shoulders. And he was sure they could also make for good security if it ever came to that. Alright. I say about ... 4 of these should be necessary. Izuku judged. Only 4? Yami frowned. He'd have thought Izuku would have wanted more. They are a bit big to just have lying around the house, Izuku explained. Yami thought about what Izuku just told him, and then looked at the absolutely massive beast behind him. Okay. Without saying another word, Yami moved on to the orb Grimm. This is a seer, Yami explained. I remember looking at cameras. So I made this. To exemplify what he was talking about, the seers glowed, and an image was displayed on the orb. Izuku stepped closer and looked into the orb. He saw Yami's room. It was like he was looking at a camera feed. They are connected. You can see what all of them see. And they can show you if something is wrong, and help you find things. Yami explained further. Izuku's eyes widened, as he realized exactly what Yami had made. It's like a bunch of sentient, floating security cameras. He was already imagining the possibilities with these. With the seers he would be able to have cameras all around the forest, looking over it and telling him if any disturbances or intruders were getting close to the house. He could also send them with the children whenever they left the house, so that way he would be alerted instantly if anything went wrong. There were so many things he could do with these. Yami, these are incredible. Izuku tactically praised his son. Honestly, I could do with at least 30 of these. He'd have 20 around the forest, 1 in his office, and 9 in reserve. Really? Yami looked at him with a bit of shock. Oh, is that too many? Izuku didn't know exactly how making Grimm ... worked. He doubted anyone did except Yami himself. And while these seers looked small, it's possible its abilities made it use up a lot of Yami's negative energy reserves. No. Fine. Yami honestly just didn't expect Izuku to be so excited about this specific Grimm. In Yami's little boy's mind, while the ability to see everything going on around him was useful, the giant monsters were more useful. Then again, Izuku knew more than most people, so Yami just took it as Izuku seeing something he didn't. Alright. Is that everything you wanted to show me? Izuku asked him. Yami nodded. And looked towards the Grimm. Where do you want them to go? Izuku looked at the dark monstrosities and tried to determine where exactly they would go. There's already so many different Grimm in the house. At this point maybe I should build some kind of barracks. Part of Izuku liked the idea of having a barracks, It's basically meant he had his own private army to serve and protect the kids. Although another part of him just felt like he really shouldn't have a private army. But at this point, he might as well fully throw normalcy out the window. If the kids hadn't done that already. Well, we'll figure that out later. For now, we'll just keep them outside. Izuku told him. Except for the gorilla, he can stay in one of the empty rooms. Yami nodded and commanded his grim mental. The Goliath laid down, and the seer stayed where it was. But the Birangel started moving towards them. Yami, what did you— Izuku was startled, as the Birangel picked up Izuku and Yami, and placed them on its back, before hustling towards the house. Why walk? Yami shrugged. Oh, okay. Just warn me next time. If Izuku wasn't so used to the Grim, then the sight of the giant gorilla coming to grab him would likely have sent him into shock. Yami nodded, giving no verbal response as per normal. There was a bit of silence until Izuku decided to ask something that had been on his mind for a while. What made you start experimenting with your quirk? Izuku asked him. You used to just like to lay around the house all day and sleep, so what made you start doing this? Yami shrugged. Got bored. Wanted to help more. You're very stressed. Izuku paused for a moment before sighing. He then picked up Yami, and laid him on his lap, before starting to pet his head. Thank you, Yami. You've been a lot of help. Now just take a break and let me handle the rest. Yami looked at Izuku's reassuring smile and all the negative emotions behind it. Part of him wanted to object, but he had stayed up pretty late, and the feeling of laying down on his father's lap while he stroked his hair was extremely soothing, and before he knew it, his eyes were closing and he was drifting off into a deep sleep. Izuku looked down at his son, with an expression of disappointment. He wasn't disappointed in Yami. Not at all, he was very proud that the boy was being so thoughtful and caring. No, the disappointment, as usual, was aimed at himself. Because he was struggling so much at his job, that his son felt the need to step in. If he had just done better, then Yami could just laze around and enjoy himself, rather than staying up late making monsters to help him. He'd just have to do better. And work harder. And then he broke into a coughing fit. After coughing into his hands for a few seconds, he felt something fly out of his mouth and hit his hand. He looked down into his hand and saw that a bit of blood had come out. Oh, Izuku said, his eyes wide with shock. That's not good. And the vague anime health problems get worse. Who knows what vague symptoms he might show next. Anyway, Fuku is now coming out of her room. Kind of. She's still super antisocial, so she's still gonna spend most of her time in her room. Also, the seers are now introduced. Expect to see those frequently. Chapter 47. New Hobbies Part 1. Netsu and Izuku were currently in the art room. For reasons Netsu wasn't entirely sure of. So Dad, why are we here? Netsu asked his father curiously. Well, I thought of something that could serve as a hobby, and as a way to help you control your quirk. Izuku walked over to a window, and picked up a painting that was set up against it, and then turned it around so Netsu could see what it was. It was a painting of a bird. Except it looked odd, not bad. In fact, it looked quite beautiful, but it was different from any painting Netsu had seen before, and he was kind of entranced by it. This was made using fumage, Izuku explained, setting the painting on a stand nearby. It's an art technique using smoke from fire to create impressions on a paper. It's essentially painting with fire. Whoa. Netsu looked down at his hands, knowing under his gloves was fire. Capable of creating such art. Can I do that too? Of course, Izuku told him. That's what I brought you here for. Izuku had several canvases nearby, as well as several stands. And he had a fire extinguisher on standby. He was well aware of what was likely to happen. And he intended to be prepared. Now it's not going to be perfect, Izuku told him. It will probably take a lot of attempts before you can even make a painting. But the more you practice, and the better you control your quirk, the better the painting will be. Netsu nodded enthusiastically, and quickly ran up to the canvas, ready to start painting. Izuku was aware that Fumiya often employed more than just fire and smoke. But it's not like Netsu was gonna be creating a masterpiece anytime soon. So for now he would just work with his flames. How bad could this end up? A few attempts later, about as bad as Izuku thought it would go, the green-haired father was currently putting out the remains of Netsu's latest attempt with a fire extinguisher. "Sorry, Dad." Netsu apologized, looking disappointed at his string of failures. "I'm not very good at this." Not many people are good at things on their first try. And no one is perfect at anything on their first, second, or even third try. Izuku told his son. "Do you want to be good at this?" "Yeah." Netsu nodded, a look of determination blazing in his eyes. "Then you just have to keep trying," Izuku told him, setting down the fire extinguisher. "Now, let's try another one." New Hobbies Part 2, Archery? Fuku asked. It was another calm day for Fukanoko, and she and Quirk were having a tea party. "Yeah." Dad set up a bunch of targets outside, with bows and arrows too. Exclaimed. "The arrows aren't pointy though. They have suction cups instead. So it's completely safe." Okay? Fuku didn't know where this was going, but she didn't like it. Dad had almost everyone try it. But I missed out. The stuff is still there. And I wanna try it ... but I don't want to go alone. Clyde. Can you go with me? In truth, hadn't tried out archery with everyone else. Because she wanted to do it with Fuku, and further, encourage her to come out of her room. And maybe try out something new. What? Fuku gasped. Why me? Because everyone else already tried it. And they don't want to go with me. Felt bad that she had to lie so much, but she didn't have a choice if she wanted Fuku to go with her. Please Fuku. Please. Pulled out her trump card, Puppy Snake Eyes. Gah. Fuku was taken aback, as many faces looking beggingly at her, all with teary eyes. Nah, that's not fair. How can snakes be so cute? Increased the pressure, wobbling her lower lip, and having her snakes move closer to Fuku while adding a teary sniffle for good measure. Fine, I'll do it. Fuku relented. Just stop looking at me like that. X's expression immediately brightened, and she went back to her bouncing, super happy self. Yes. But I have to wear my hoodie. Fuku amended. Deal. Smirked at her. Trust me, this is gonna be a hit. Sometime later, in the backyard, Fuku and Quirk were standing in the omni-purpose court, where Izuku had indeed set up a bunch of targets, with some small bows and suction cup arrows. The walking chemical weapon girl was dressed in her bear-themed hoodie. Watching take her bow and arrows. Why did you want to come with me? You'd be better going off alone than being with dumb Fuku. Oh, don't say that. I love spending time with you. Reassured her. I'm glad we target to do this together! ! You're going to make archery puns the entire time, aren't you? Fuku honestly didn't mind puns and had honestly come to like them. But had a habit of getting repetitive with her puns. If she had a drop of courage for every time she heard make a rock or snake pun, then she would be Kiba. Bullseye. Giggled, giving Fuku a thumbs up. Now pick up a bow. What? Fuku recoiled back in shock. Why do I have to do it? Well, I can't just let you sit there and do nothing by yourself, explained. Let's turn this archery into archery. It's okay. No one else is watching. Fuku looked around nervously, confirming that in fact, no one was watching her. Hesitantly, she walked next to K and picked up her own bow and arrows. Oh, I'm going to be awful at this. You don't know until you try. Chimed. Alright. Let's start. Quickly pulled back her bowstring, with Fuku tentatively following in suit. Okay, Fuku. Don't embarrass yourself. Focus. Fuku was nervous, her hands were shaking. believed in her and she needed to try her best to succeed. She focused all her attention on the target. And everything else became an unfocused blur. She drowned out the world around her until all there was was the target. Her hands stopped shaking, her breath calmed, they unleashed the arrows. And flew 2 feet before landing on the ground, not even reaching the target. Fuku's arrow on the other hand actually hit the target. It wasn't in the center at all. In fact, it was more around the middle of the target, but it still hit. You hit it. Honestly didn't care so much for her own failure, as she was very willing to overlook that to celebrate her friend's success. No one could see it behind her hoodie, but Fuku was absolutely shocked. I hit it. I didn't get in the center. But I hit it. Yeah, you did even better than me. Raised her hand towards Fuku. High five. Fuku slowly raised her hand and high five. How did it feel? Did you like it? Asked her quickly. It was fine a bit calming actually, Fuku admitted. There was something about focusing on a single thing so intensely and letting everything else go that she found relaxing. Now let's do it again. Before Fuku could say anything, pulled out another arrow and loaded it into her bow. Let's do this. Wait. Fuku hastily pulled out another arrow and started lining up the shot. After a few moments, they released the arrows once more. Arrow flew past the target, missing it completely. Fuku's arrow hit the target, but this time it hit the edge. A bit farther from where she wanted it to be. The lavender-haired girl frowned under her hoodie. I got worse. But you still hit it. Pointed out. I still haven't done that yet. You're doing way better than me. That's great. Fuku didn't respond, and instead, she just took out another arrow. This time, with more determination. A few attempts later, and Fuku kept trying over and over again. The snake-haired girl had failed horribly every time. As it turns out, trying to do something that required a lot of accuracies while wearing something that made her sight significantly worse, was a difficult task. So she had given up and decided to cheer on Fuku, who was doing significantly better than her, but not as good as she'd like. She had missed a few shots, but most of them had hit, and a few of them had even got close to the middle. But none of her shots were ever as close as her first one. And that frustrated the heck out of her. It wasn't just that she was in her mind failing, she was used to that. She was expecting that. But failing at something she had already succeeded at? She wouldn't stand for that. Why can't I do as well as before? Fuku pouted, stomping her foot and closing her eyes in frustration. And then when she opened her eyes it came to her. Her hoodie was hindering her. Of course, if she had something in front of her eyes she wouldn't do as well. Ignoring the fact that her hoodie was on when she did that first shot, Fuku would never even consider taking off her hood while outside, under normal circumstances. But these weren't normal circumstances. She needed to at least do as well as the first shot. And she wasn't even thinking about the fact that she was outside. She unzipped the part of the hoodie that covered her face and pulled down her hood, exposing her head to the open air. Gasped at this, but Fuku wasn't listening. The world faded away until it was just her bow, and the target. She took out an arrow and loaded her bow. Focus, Fuku. Focus. She told herself. She took a few seconds to line up the shoot and hit. She had managed to get a bit closer to the center than even her first shot. Yes. Fuku jumped in the air in celebration, feeling a rush of satisfaction and accomplishment fill her. Great job, Fuku. Woo! Cheered, jumping up and down and waving her hands around excitedly. Now try to hit the middle. Try and hit the middle. Right. Has never heard Fuku sound so fearless in her life. That girl had really gotten into this and was determined to hit the center. She loaded another arrow. Focused and fired it. Failure. She hit the edge again. Repeat. Failure. She missed the target entirely. She was too excited. She calmed herself. And repeated. Failure. She was closer but still not where she wanted to be. Repeat. Failure. Repeat. Failure. Repeat. Failure. Repat. Hit. Fuka had hit the edge of the center circle. It wasn't dead center, but it was still the center. I did it. Fuku said with a bit of disbelief before a look of sheer joy made its way onto her face. I did it. Ran over, and glomped Fuku, enveloping her in a hug before the two started jumping up and down in celebration. You did it, you did it. The two celebrated their victory for about a minute. Until they heard a very familiar voice. Yes, yes, very good job indeed. And Fuka froze, and looked behind them, and found that Kiba had arrived at some point and was smiling at them. So that's what you look like, Kiba commented, looking over Fuku's appearance. You're right. Fuku immediately let go of Ken and started running away, while frantically putting their hoodie back over her face. Don't hurt me. Sighed, and Kiba just stood there in stunned silence for a moment before saying, I just wanted to say she looked nice. Meanwhile, a good distance away, a seer laid in wait. Little did Fuku know, it had been there the entire time. Watching them, and broadcasting it all, straight to Izuku. Meanwhile, with Izuku. Archery. What do you know? Izuku said, turning away from the image that the seer had been broadcasting. Well, I'll need to learn more about that then. If Fuku found an interest she couldn't do in her room, then Izuku would need to do everything he could to encourage her. Because the key wasn't forcing Fuku out of her room, that would most likely end horribly, but it was making Fuku want to come out of her room. Which wasn't as hard as it sounded, because Fuku did want to go outside and socialize with people. It's just that her crippling fear of absolutely everything would often make her think she didn't want to. So he just needed to motivate her. I think has earned a pudding cup tonight. Izuku smiled to himself. New Hobbies Part 3. Kyoko was currently in the art room, doing something Izuku had suggested to her. Painting. She has so many memories stored in her head. Some were bad. Most of them were bad actually. But there were some hidden gems in the rough. She had foggy memories of Eri being tossed into the air by her father, giggling happily. When Kiba first awakened her quirk and started running around at super speeds. And despite how much she despised All Might, she had to admit internally that the memory of seeing a hero rise from the flames with people on his back, smiling reassuringly, was inspiring. Izuku had told her if she was forced to carry on with all those memories, then she might as well focus on the brighter ones. Which is something she had taken to heart. And so here she was, currently trying to finger paint a picture of a child being tossed in the air by their father. With the child of course being her and the father being Izuku. The painting was, of course, pretty terrible, but what else could you expect from a 6-year-old? She had to use a stool just to reach the canvas. As she was painting, she heard the door open behind her. She turned around and saw Deku enter the room with a small bonsai tree in his arms. Oh hello, Deku. Kyoko greeted kindly. Deku nodded at her and moved on. He grabbed a nearby table, and moved it over, before placing the plant down on it and moving to one of the canvases, grabbing some paints and paintbrushes, and sitting down on a chair to start painting. Kyoko looked over to him, interested in what he was doing. After a few moments of watching him paint, she saw that he was painting the tree in front of him. Which seemed pretty obvious now that she thought about it. It was pretty clear early on that Deku's painting was also going to be terrible. But again, despite his appearance, he was in fact a child. And he did only just start painting. With her curiosity sated, Kyoko went back to her painting. And no sound rang out inside that room, except for the noise of paints hitting paper. Chapter 48. Alright, so let me clarify a few things first. Firstly, I did have to nerf a lot of Ben's aliens, both in overall power, and some of their abilities. Because XLR8 could move so fast that time slowed down, and Heat Blast could teleport, sometimes. Yeah, Original Ben 10 would often do some weird things with the aliens' abilities. So for this, the aliens will only have their basic abilities. No teleporting heat blast. And I made their power levels more in line with MHA power levels. What do you mean 2 kids are coming tomorrow? It's too early. Izuku all but shouted into the phone. What do you mean? What do I mean? Nami asked, sarcastically on the other end. You just released a stream talking about how terrible DOC to the children they keep. People are up in arms. So we're moving a bit faster to get the kids to you. Izuku remembered Kiba's stream, and how his actions and what was said on that stream could lead to DOC freaking out a bit and doing something like this. The green-haired dad sighed, as he realized, he kinda dug his own grave here. Well, I guess when you look at it that way it makes sense. Still, I wish you'd given me more of a heads up. You don't really need to prepare much. These kids don't require any special needs outside of the ones they already have, that is. Nami yawned. Well anyway, it's late so I'm gonna head to bed. It's 1 p.m. Izuku pointed out. And that's really late, if you plan to stay up all night drinking, Nami explained. Anyway, you should get the files for those 2 in a few hours or so. Bye. Nami hung up, and Izuku felt a migraine washing over him. He wanted to take some medication for it, but according to the medical website he consulted, taking too much medication could have adverse effects on his health. Ugh. I feel so tired. I don't think I could even read the files like this. Izuku had no choice but to admit defeat, and fall to his body's limitations this time around. My tablet will notify me of any new messages anyway. Reluctantly, Izuku made his way over from his desk, into his room, and finally onto his bed. He laid his tablet on the night table next to him and looked over at the seer grim that he had in his room. Wake me up when this goes off. The seer made a strange gurgly, bony noise, to notify that it heard its instructions. With that done, Izuku closed his eyes and immediately passed out. A few hours later, after a few-hour nap that Izuku won't admit he desperately needed, he had received the files on the 2 new children and was currently finishing up on reading them. The children were siblings. A brother and sister. Junkin and Nara. Both 10 years old. Junkin was of average height, brown hair, and green eyes, with a pretty average build. Nara was just a bit taller than her brother, with the same green eyes. She was a redhead, and her hair was short, not even going down to her shoulders. They had the same quirk, and that quirk was very interesting. Their quirks were called Omni and allowed each child to transform into 10 different forms. All of which had been given names, seemingly by the children themselves. Starting with Junkin. The first form that was documented was apparently called Upgrade, and the photo showed it to be some sort of black, white, and yellow creature. It seemed to be like Samson in that it wasn't really a solid creature, rather it was more like a sentient liquid. Its ability allowed it to merge itself with technology, which would not only give it control over said piece of technology, but also allow it to alter, or upgrade, that piece of technology. His second form, Four Arms, was aptly named, as it did indeed have 4 arms. It essentially just looked like a big red guy with 2 sets of arms and eyes. This one's power seemed to be super strength, as well as reaping the benefits of having 4 arms. Wild Mutt was a massive, orange dog-like creature, about twice the size of a wolf. Noticeably it lacked any sort of eyes. Its ability, alongside its natural strength, agility, and claws, seemed to be some sort of smell-based sonar. Despite not having eyes, it can get a perfect sense of its surroundings. If anything, they were better than eyes. Stinkfly was a giant bug-like creature that, on top of smelling absolutely disgusting apparently, could fly. It also could shoot a strange sticky goop out of its 4 eyes. Tentacles? Lastly, it also had a rather sharp tail that could apparently rip through steel. Igai was a large green muscular humanoid creature, with eyes all over its body, with a huge one in its chest, and on its face where its eyes would be, were 2 massive ears. Apparently, Those eyes, all shot lasers. Each one is powerful enough to rip through a car. Heat Blast was another humanoid, but this one looked to be made entirely out of rocks and fire. It was like Netsu, in that it had the ability to control and manipulate fire. It also had the ability to absorb fire into itself. Feedback was yet another humanoid, with a slick black color scheme with a dash of white. It had only one eye, though, as well as two long antennae and a tail. A notable thing about those antennae and the tail is that at the ends of them were wire-like tubes, with holes at the end. These same things were at the tips of all of its fingers. The purpose of these tied into its main ability: absorbing, storing, and redirecting energy. It could absorb pretty much any kind of energy through those tubes, store it in its body, and then shoot it back out. Blitzwolfer was what one would imagine a werewolf to look like, complete with the imposing size and deadly claws. On top of the previously mentioned claws, it also had enhanced physiology, and its jaw could open up into 4 separate parts, and unleash a sonic attack similar to Presentmic. Second to last was Ripjaws, a giant fish-like creature with a massive, sharp jaw, and a thing on his head that reminded him of an anglerfish. It had 2 forms. One with legs that had webbed feet much like its webbed claws. And the other gave it a big tail, similar to a merman. This one was obviously aquatic and thus had the ability to breathe underwater. It could swim at incredible speeds, and its claws were extremely sharp. Although its jaw was even more dangerous, capable of chomping down on pretty much anything. This form however had a massive weakness, however, in that it needed water pretty much constantly, and could only survive without for about 4 minutes. Lastly for Junkin, there was Ghost Freak. And as the name implied, it was very pale and ghost-like, being a roundish white figure with a tail instead of legs, a bunch of black trails, running along its body, that its singular eye could move along. Much like a ghost it could turn intangible, as well as being able to possess people by going inside them. Moving on to Nara, her first form was called Gray Matter, and it was extremely small, only reaching just above Izuku's ankle. It was mostly humanoid except for its head, which was mostly taken up by its huge eyes that had rectangular pupils. Its main ability was enhanced intelligence. In this form, Nara was smart enough to construct complex machines out of junk. The next one was Big. Both in its height and in its width. It was called Cannon Bolt. It had a mostly white body with some black stripes and pink armored parts all around its body. According to the files, it could roll up into an armored ball, and spin at rapid speeds, hitting into things and bouncing off walls like a living cannonball. Hence the name. Next was a humanoid lizard hybrid. It was very thin, with 3 sharp claws, and a pointy helmet-like head, and a long tail. The most notable feature was its feet, which seemed to have little ball wheels attached to them. This one, called XLR8, could move at astounding speeds. Capable of running on water, outspeeding cars, and even some trains. Moving on was another lizard-like creature, but this one was a quadruped. With a blue head and black and white body, it would be hard to tell what this creature's power was if the name Artiguana didn't give it away. It could shoot blasts of extremely cool pressurized air that would freeze pretty much anything it touched. Back onto humanoids with the next one, Diamond Head. This was a large woman that seemed to be entirely made out of crystals. Despite the name, they weren't diamonds, but rather an extremely strong unique crystal, that looked similar to diamond. On top of being incredibly durable, Diamond Head could manipulate their body, not like Samson or Upgrade could, but rather they could shift it around a bit. As well as being able to shoot pieces of it off as projectiles, which implied that it also had some sort of regenerative abilities as well. Lastly, it could also cause crystals to grow and erupt nearby itself. Onto another smaller one, Ditto was the only one of these forms that didn't change Nara's height all that much. It was humanoid with cartoonishly large hands, and some fins on its head. Its main ability was cloning, able to make up to 30 copies of itself. Although all the clones experienced the same sensations, So if one clone got hurt, all the others would feel it. It's unknown what would happen if one of the clones died. From small to big, came the biggest transformation here. Humungizer. A giant humanoid dinosaur creature that stood around 20 feet tall. It could also grow to about 30 feet in a similar way to Mount Lady, although doing so would strain its heart as it tried to pump blood through the entire body, and thus would cause the creature to faint if they remained in that state for too long. Their size gave the user incredible strength, however, they would be rather slow. The next one, Bloxx, was a gorilla made up of ... multicolored Lego blocks. Well, there were stranger quirks. Regardless, the creature had the ability to manipulate and shift its body, as well as break it apart ... like a Lego set. Its blocks seemed to be about as tough as steel, so they were very durable. And it also seemed to be able to regrow its lost body parts at an accelerated rate. Wildvine was next, and it appeared to be a giant moving Venus flytrap with tentacle-like roots for legs, and a head, with a single eye coming out of the mouth of the trap. This one had the ability to control plants in its nearby surroundings, as well as being able to, much like Bloxx, stretch and manipulate its body at will and could regenerate. It also had black egg-like seeds growing from its back, which according to the notes, exploded like grenades after 5 seconds of them being removed from their back. The last form was called Lodestar. Another humanoid one, it being mostly black with some blue thrown in. Its hands, feet, and shoulders all were shaped like strange tuning forks, with the head floating in between its two large shoulders via some sort of magnetic power. Speaking of magnetic power, that seemed to be its ability. Lodestar could control and bend metal to its will, using its hands. Its body was also made up of hundreds of thousands of smaller magnets, allowing it to put itself back together if it gets harmed, although its head is completely solid, and can't regenerate in any way. With this many forms and this many abilities, it would seem like these kids would be the most powerful and versatile of them of all. If it weren't for a few major weaknesses. The first and most important was that both children could only stay in their forms for about 10 minutes. Afterward, they would turn back to normal, and wouldn't be able to use their quirk again for another 10 minutes. It's speculated that with further training, exercising their quirk, and just aging, this time limit could be expanded. Another weakness is that seemingly, once they transformed into something, they could not shift into another form. Or at least they couldn't do so currently. Perhaps with more training, this could be achievable. Lastly, was the issue of them not having full control of what they transformed into. Sometimes they panic and shift into a random form, which could cause problems. However, none of this would be all that terrible. So far, while they were powerful, they didn't seem overly dangerous. It made Izuku wonder why exactly their parents gave them up. Until he got to the last detail. And one of the most important ones. In their various forms, their personalities could shift slightly. Nara as XLR8 would become more impatient and twitchy. When Junkin was Wild Mutt, he would act more dog-like. They were still themselves, and for the most part, this wasn't an issue. Except with one particular transformation, Ghost Freak. For context, these children were born to rather neglectful parents, who occasionally shouted verbal abuse at them. This caused resentment to build up in the two children, which was reasonable. This resentment is typically buried in fear of punishment from their parents. Of course, the kids could very easily physically overpower their parents, however, the duo did have a solid moral compass at least, and thus wouldn't try such things. That was until Ghost Freak came into the equation. The personality change that came with Ghost Freak was that it caused Junkin to be more spiteful, angrier, and more wrathful, as well as being far more disposed to violence. This eventually caused Junkin to stray to attack his own parents, which is what led to him being taken by DOC, with Nara insisting that she leave with him. Ghost Freak, however, would continue to be a problem, attacking people out of spite and anger. And seeing as it could go through walls, containing him was a big issue. Junkin of course hated this and absolutely didn't want to transform into Ghost Freak. However, due to their difficulties with controlling transformation, he sometimes didn't have a choice. So, DOC came up with a solution that would fix the accidental transformation issue. The Omnitrix. Named after the two's quirk, Omni, and Trick ... because it was a trick. It was a watch-like support item that was attached to the user's wrist. The user would press down on a button, and a dial would pop up, showing a silhouette of one of their forms. They would rotate the dial to cycle through the silhouettes until they reached the form they wanted to be in, and then all they would have to do is press down on the dial, and then they would be in that form. They wouldn't be able to use their quirk without using the Omnitrix, and Ghost Freak's silhouette wasn't available on Junkin's watch, so he could no longer access that form. Except that was a lie. The only thing the Omnitrix actually did was the button thing and the silhouette thing. It didn't actually control Junkin and Nara's quirks at all. That was scientifically impossible. Essentially, it was just a toy with almost no practical use except for a built-in timer that would cause the device to glow red if they were running out of time, or if their quirk was recharging. But Nara and Junkin didn't know that. They were under the assumption that the Omnitrix could control and regulate their quirk. And because they believed this, they no longer suffered these accidental transformations. It was just one big placebo. It wasn't perfect, however, as the device itself essentially did nothing, and the control was reliant on the two's mental state. If they were extremely stressed or angry or something like that, then it would still be possible for them to have a transformation error. This was explained to the children as a glitch that would rarely occur. Izuku was, as he found himself more and more these days, of two minds about this. On the one hand, it was really the only way to prevent Junkin from going on a rampage. And it would prevent a bunch of other mishaps as well. But on the other hand, this could be detrimental to their growth in the future. If they allow themselves to grow reliant on that device, then they would never learn how to control their quirks on their own. Izuku sighed. I guess I'll let them keep thinking that for now. Hopefully, Junkin will be less resentful and have more control of himself in the future, and I'll be able to tell him then. Until then, he would let them keep believing the lies, DOC told them. Alright, preparing their rooms should be easy enough. I'll put them right next to each other since they're siblings. Izuku spoke aloud. This should go smoothly ... right? As if life wanted to immediately prove him wrong, he suddenly broke out into a coughing fit, and blood flew out of his mouth. He looked down at his blood-stained fist, and to his horror, he found it was even more blood than the last time. Alright. I'll take a break ... for an hour. Izuku sighed. Then I'll book a doctor's appointment ... in a month. That was a good time, right? The next day, Junkin and Nara rode in the DOC limousine. In complete silence. Nara was shifting in her seat anxiously, looking around the window periodically. Her brother, on the other hand, was just casually messing with his Omnitrix. After looking out the window, Nara looked back at Junkin with a worried expression. Why are you so calm? Why are you so stressed? Junkin asked in return. It's just another government facility. It's just run by a different guy. It's not just another government facility. It's gonna be our home until we can live by ourselves. Nara pointed out sharply. And that guy is gonna be our legal guardian. He might actually, you know, care about us. Junkin scoffed. Yeah, right. We all know adults are all self-centered. What, so you're gonna be self-centered when you get older? Oh wait, you're already self-centered. Nara smirked for a moment before her serious expression returned. Even if that's true, there's gonna be other people our age. This could be our chance to make some real friends for once. PSH. Who needs friends? I have all the friends I need in here. Junkin said, holding up his Omnitrix. Nara rolled her eyes. Well, you can be a friendless loser all you want. I am gonna actually try and socialize ... That means talking to people, by the way. I know what that means. Junkin lied. And I doubt you'll make any. Have you looked in a mirror? Before Nara could give a scathing retort, the car came to a stop. A few seconds later, Junkin's door was opened by an agent. "We're here." The two kids climbed out of the car and were immediately met with the sight of the enormous building that was the Midoriya household. Both children looked at it in awe, with eyes wide as dinner plates, as they looked up at the building. "Whoa!" Junkin gasped. "This place is huge. It is a lot to take in, isn't it?" The two looked back down and saw Izuku walking towards them, with K by his side. "Hello there." Izuku greeted them with a smile on his face. "My name is Izuku Midoriya. I'll be your guardian from now on. And I'm K Midoriya. Nice to meet ya," K said, rushing over to the two of them and extending her hand out for a handshake. The two didn't return that handshake though, because they were too busy staring at Izuku in disbelief. Izuku sighed. "Yeah, I'm probably younger than you expected. I get that a lot. I ask you to just ignore that. It'll make everything much easier." "Okay," Nara said. "This wasn't what I expected at all. Hey, don't forget about me." K started waving her hands in front of the two to get their attention, eventually getting them to focus on her. "Oh sorry." Nara looked at K's hair for a few seconds, before forcing herself to look away and focus on her face instead. "My name's Nara. Nice to meet you." Junkin did not have this same tact and openly stared at K's hair. "Your hair is freaky." "Smack how!" Junkin cried out in pain and Nara smacked him on the back of the head. "Don't be insensitive, you jerk," Nara quickly scolded her brother, before turning to K with a worried expression. "I am so sorry about him. I'm sure you snakes are wonderful." K smiled at the compliment, and her snakes hissed pleasingly. "Thanks. And don't worry. I've been called much worse." Nara flinched at that statement and looked at the girl apologetically. "Oh sorry? It's okay." K then turned to Junkin. "Hi. What's your name?" "Junkin. But just call me Ken." The older boy insisted as he took a step back, K's overflowing energy being a bit much for him. Meanwhile, in the background, the DOC agents had finished taking the two kids' stuff out of the car. "That's everything. We're leaving." Izuku nodded, as the DOC agents got in their car and drove away. "Well, we should take you and your things up to your room," Izuku said, as he took a whistle out of his pocket, and blew on it. "By the way, don't panic." The two children gave him a confused look, but before they could ask why he said that two angels jumped off the roof, and crashed into the ground, startling both children. "AHHH!" They both shouted in fear, both jumping back and instinctively pressing the buttons on their Omnitrix, ready to transform and take on the beasts. "Wait!" Izuku shouted out, stopping both the kids who gave him confused and panicked looks. "Don't worry. These are friendly." "They don't look friendly," Nara exclaimed. "They're like demons." Ken shouted. "Yup. Those are the Grim," K explained. "They're scary, but they won't hurt you. They help a lot around the house too. Watch this." "Do a jump." At her command, the Angels jumped 12 feet in the air, before crashing back down into the ground with a loud thud. As K said, these are the Grim. They are essentially mindless puppets that act as servants. These ones are called Angels. There are other types of Grim, but they all have a similar aesthetic. So you should be able to tell what's a Grim and what's not. Izuku explains further. "Before looking at the Grim, grab their luggage, and follow us." The Grim nodded and did as they were instructed, grabbing the luggage in their massive hands, before turning to Izuku, waiting for him to go somewhere. "Why don't you go tell everyone else about the others? I'd like to introduce them to everything a bit more calmly." Izuku asked her. K frowned for a moment, before nodding, and running back into the house. "Okay, you two follow me to your rooms. You're free to ask any questions you'd like on the way," Izuku says as he started walking into the house, with the two kids in the Grimm in tow. When the kids got into the house, they immediately started looking around, admiring the sheer size of the facility. They managed to get all the way up the first flight of stairs, before starting to ask questions. So can we control these things too? Ken asked Izuku in a hopeful tone. Nara rolled her eyes. Really, that's the first question you want to ask? What? You're telling me you don't want to control an army of demon monsters? Ken asked defensively. Izuku gave an amused chuckle. Control of the Grimm is given to all the kids and staff. Although Yami is the only one capable of giving people that control. He's another one of the kids here and makes these with his quirk. So if you want control of them you just have to go to him. Sweet. Ken pumped his fist. Nara face-palmed and shook her head at her brother's childishness, before looking up and around herself. She saw a few more Grimm walking around. A few Beowulfs and a passing seer. But no humans. No children. Speaking of, the kids and staff. Where are they? Nara asked. Most of the kids are either in their rooms or outside. There may be a few others scattered throughout the house. Izuku explained. As for the staff well I haven't really hired any yet. Wait, you mean you've been doing all this by yourself? Nara asked, a bit shocked that such a big place only had one human worker. Man, no wonder you look so tired, Ken noted. You must be doing a lot of work. You could say that, Izuku responded. Soon enough they reached two doors, with Nara and Ken's names on them. Set the bags down in front of the rooms, and then go back to your post. Izuku ordered the Angels. The Grimm did as ordered, before going away, leaving Izuku with the kids. These will be your rooms. You're free to decorate them, as you please. If you want anything, there is a board in one of the hallways where you can write down what you want. I'll try to get it for you before the end of the week. Izuku explained. Awesome. Ken cheered. You know, you're actually pretty cool. Don't expect me to call you Dad though. That's fine, Izuku reassured him. A lot of people here think of me as a dad, but that's their choice. On paper I'm just your legal guardian, so you can consider me to be anything you want. Thank you, for everything. Nara gave Izuku a polite bow. We really appreciate it. Izuku smiled at them kindly. You're welcome. If you need anything else, I'll be in my office on the top floor. Also, in your files, it said you wanted to be heroes? Yup. You're looking at the future, #1 hero. Ken said cockily. I think you'd have to have a brain to be #1 Nimrod. Nara scoffed. But yeah, we're gonna be heroes when we get older. Why bring it up? Well, there are actually quite a few other kids here that also want to be heroes. They spar against each other a lot, so feel free to join in. Izuku told them. Also, there is a training room where you can use your quirks at full power, without worrying about causing too much damage. Seriously. This place is awesome. Ken shouted, before running away. Training room, here I come. Hey wait Jufus, you don't even know where you're going. Nara chased after her brother, leaving Izuku behind. I have a strong feeling that those two are gonna be a handful. Izuku sighed. So yeah. 2 new kids based on Ben and Gwen. Although it's based on Gwen from the Gwen 10 timeline where she got the Omnitrix. I used Ben's names for her aliens instead of ones Gwen came up with, because they're more recognizable, and also just better. Anyway, these will be the last 2 children introduced until Izuku falls ill, and then gets healthy again and gets employees. Also, I did go over the age limit I set for the characters, but this is a special case. After all, how could I make characters based on the Ben 10 franchise any younger than 10? Chapter 49. Shorts 11. Okay, so I've heard people say that they have a hard time keeping up with the characters and they'd like something that lists out the characters as well as a description of their quirks and personalities. I'd thought I did that using Foo's notes, but then I realized that it's possible that the chapter would get buried and hard to find. So I titled the chapter to make it easier to find. I'll be doing another one of those soon. Probably the next chapter or the chapter after that. Anyway, this will focus on the new chapter. Let's begin. Little Purple Book. Nara was in the training room, practicing her quirk. She had just finished using one of her transformations and was now waiting for her quirk to recharge. I need to improve more, Nara said, drinking a bottle of water to refresh herself. I can't let Ken beat me anymore. Given that both of them wanted to be heroes, Ken and Nara often sparred against each other. And more times than not, Ken won. Which was infuriating for multiple reasons, most of which was that it fueled his ego. She knew she was smarter than him, she had always gotten better grades in school, and she studied karate ... from a book, but she still studied it. And she never slacked on her training, so why did she still lose? Yo. Nara looked towards the door and saw Fu walking in, with a notebook in his hands. Oh. Hello. Nara greeted the younger boy. I'm Nara. I'm new around here. Fuhai. But just call me Fu. Fu introduced himself before one of Kyozai's tentacles came out. And this is Kyozai. Yes, he lives inside me. Don't worry about it. Oh, okay. Nara was taken aback by the idea of someone living inside someone else, but she'd seen Ghost Freak do similar things, so it wasn't too strange. I heard about you and your brother's quirk from Dad. I find it very interesting. Fu complimented. Yeah, it's pretty cool, huh? Nara casually bragged, gladly taking in the praise. It is. All those forms that can do all sorts of different things. Fu took out his notebook. Like that lodestar form. Do you think you could use it to fly? You know, since its body is made out of magnets? No, I tried, and for some reason, that doesn't work. Nara frowned. She remembered being really disappointed when she tried that. Interesting. Are magnets different from other metals? Maybe your metal controlling powers don't work on magnets? Fu speculated as he jotted down some notes. Nara paused. I never thought of that. I'll need to try that sometime. Who knows, maybe the magnetic force of Lodestar's body is so strong or dense or something it can't be manipulated. Interesting. Also, have you thought about maybe trying to get on top of a piece of metal and using that to fly? Fu asked her. Nara's eyes widened a bit. No. I should really try that. That sounds like it could work. I'd have to work on my balance, but it sounds plausible. She turned to Fu to thank him for his idea, but found that he was furiously scribbling down notes, enraptured in his own little world. Fu? Nara waved a hand in front of him. Huh? Fu snapped out of his trance and looked back at Nara. Oh, sorry. We really like analyzing quirks and writing them down. It helps us come up with creative ways to use our quirks. It was at that moment that a light bulb went over Nara's head. That's it. Why don't we have a brainstorming session right now? All right. Fu shrugged. But let's do that in the library. A few minutes later, in the library. After walking from the training room to the library, Fu grabbed a blank, purple notebook for Nara to write stuff down in, and the two sat down at one of the tables. Alright, so have you used Accelerate to run on water yet? Fu asked. Yup. It's weird, and if I slow down or stop I fall into the water, but I can do it. Nara wasn't perfect at running on water, and she hadn't been able to practice it much until now, but she knew she was capable of it. Alright. Fu jotted that down. What about Diamond Head? Can you just make diamonds, or can you control them? Like making them float around in the air and stuff? That apostrophe s ... A good question. Another thing I'll have to try. Nara jotted that down as a reminder. And speaking of Diamond Head, I should try and see if I can use his diamonds to reflect sunlight into someone's eyes. Or you could use all the dust from running as Accelerate and get that in someone's eyes. Fu brought up. Or water, that also works. And I could use that water to put out fires. Nara imagined it, running on water so fast that the water followed behind her, and then she would turn and create a massive wave that would crash into a burning building or something, putting the fires out and saving the day. Suddenly Fu paused, as a thought occurred. Hey ... why aren't you using gray matter? Nara gave him a confused look. What do you mean? I mean right now? Why aren't you using gray matter? Fu asked her. We're having a brainstorm, so why aren't you using the form which is only good for thinking? Nara's eyes went wide for a moment, and then immediately, facepalmed. Oh my god, I forgot I had that. I don't really ... use gray matter for anything. I can't really use it in a fight too much, and schools obviously didn't let me use it. So I just kinda forgot about it. Alright, let's try it. She moved her hands down to her omnitrix, and she pressed the button, and the dial popped up. She moved the circle around until she found gray matter's silhouette. After pushing the dial down, suddenly half the room was encompassed with pink light. When the light died down, Fu saw ... nothing. Nara had seemingly disappeared. Ah. Gah. Gah. Fu saw the slightest bit of gray matter's head, coming up, as Nara jumped, trying to reach the table. Deciding to help, Fu extended one of Kyozai's tentacles over to Nara, and grabbed her, lifting her onto the table. Thanks, Nara said. Her voice was a bit weird and nasally while in this form. She picked up the pencil, which was now almost as big as her, and walked over to her notebook. Now let's continue. What's underneath? Yeah, take that. Ken shouted out, as he mashed on the controller. We're almost there. He's almost dead. Netsu yelled at the top of his lungs. The two boys were currently playing Sumo Smashers 2 on co-op and were on the third boss. Despite having a too cool for anyone attitude, his conviction to be a lone wolf fell apart when he realized that being alone sucked and some of the people here were pretty cool. Like Netsu. Someone whom he quickly befriended, due in part to his personality, and also because he reminded him of Heat Blast. Then the boss's health bar depleted, and celebration music played. Yeah. The two boys dropped their controllers and jumped onto the couch, throwing their hands up in celebration. However, in his jubilation, Natsu accidentally lost control of his quirk, and fire burst out of the bottom of his pants, and onto the couch. Ah! Ken quickly jumped off the couch, which was now partially on fire. Oh, not again. Netsu lamented. Don't worry. I got it. Ken quickly activated his omnitrix, and turned the dial until he found Heat Blast's silhouette. He pressed down and after a flash of green light, there stood Heat Blast. Time to cool this place down. Ken quipped as he extended his hands out. The fire suddenly moved towards him and was sucked into his hands, and then after a few moments, the fire was gone. Absorbed into Ken. Wow. That's so cool. Netsu exclaimed, admiring the Heat Blast transformation. You took in all the fire. Yeah, I know, I'm awesome. Ken quickly gloated before looking at the half-burnt couch and realizing there was about to be trouble. But it didn't save the couch. Aw man, this thing is toast. That Izuku guy is gonna be pissed. Not really. Huh? Ken looked behind him and saw a seer orb floating behind him. What the heck? The seer Grim had detected a fire and reported it to Izuku, and so now it was here on Izuku's behalf. Don't worry, I'm just speaking through the orb. It's like a camera and a speaker, Izuku said through the seer. And don't worry too much about the couch. The reason you guys are here is because you have a hard time controlling your quirks, so I knew something like this would happen. I have a few replacement couches in storage. I'm replacing it now. At that moment a Birangel came into the living room, picked Netsu off the couch, and then picked the couch up over his shoulder, before carrying it off. And then another Birangel came in with a new couch, identical to the old one, and then set it down, before leaving. Wow, that was fast, Ken noted, before looking back at the seer. So are we ... not in trouble? Back with Ken's old family, if they destroyed something by accident with their quirks, not only would they get grounded for a month, but he and his sister would get brutal tongue lashings, in a way that could be considered verbal abuse. No. It was just an accident that happened because of Netsu's quirk. I can't blame him too much. Izuku admitted. And you actually helped. If you hadn't put out the fire, then the sprinklers would have gone off and some of the things in the room would have gotten damaged and I would have had to replace them. You saved me a lot of trouble. If anything, you deserve to be rewarded. How about some extra ice cream tonight? Really? Ken exclaimed in excitement. Awesome. Well, I'll leave you two alone now. I have some things I need to get back to. See you at dinner, Izuku said before the seer slowly left the room. You know, for someone who works with the government, that guy is pretty cool, Ken admitted. Yeah, Dad's great. He doesn't yell at us or punish us unless we hurt each other or ourselves. Netsu explained. So you can absorb fire, right? Duh. You just saw me do it. Ken pointed out. So if you absorbed enough of my fire could we see what I look like? Netsu had never actually seen what he looked like under the fire. Sure, if he got doused with enough water, then he would eventually get put out, but that wouldn't last long enough for him to actually see himself. Ken's eyes widened a bit, as he realized that that could be possible. He smirked and said, "Let's go get a mirror." A few minutes later, after quickly borrowing a mirror from Kiba, they put it up into the training room, and Netsu stood in front of it. All right. I'm ready. Netsu was bouncing with excitement. He had to do everything he could to keep from flying right now. Ken stood behind him and moved his hands towards Netsu. Netsu's fire started moving towards Ken, as he absorbed it into his body. After a few moments, the fire seemed to peel off of Netsu's body, slowly revealing the boy underneath, until it was gone, and they could finally see what he really looked like. Whoa. Netsu stared in the mirror at his true appearance. His eyes were amber, and his hair was scarlet red. His skin was very tanned, and he had freckles, like Izuku. His entire form was glowing, and fire still poured off of him as Ken absorbed all the flames that tried to engulf him. Netsu only got to look at himself for about half a minute, before they heard a sound come from the Omnitrix. Brrr. Ken looked down at the Omnitrix and saw it was blinking red. Uh-oh. Brrr. There was a flash of red, and then Ken was back into his normal form. Oh, man. Immediately Netsu's body burst into flames, and he was also back to normal. But unlike Ken, he wasn't too upset about it. In fact, he turned to the other boy with a huge smile. That was awesome. Amazing. Thank you so much. All you, it's not a big deal. Sorry, you couldn't see it for much longer. Stupid time limit. Ken lamented, scowling at his Omnitrix. It's okay. It was cool. But I still think being on fire all the time is more awesome. Netsu admitted. On one hand, being on fire all the time could be a huge nuisance, and dangerous in a lot of ways. But on the other hand, his fireproof gear mitigated a lot of those issues, and it just looked so cool. Seeing himself without fire was a novelty, but overall he preferred his usual look. Hey, let's see whose fire is stronger later. Netsu challenged. Ken smirked. You're on. Twice the strength versus twice the arms. Ken was just sitting in his room, casually watching some TV in a beanbag chair, while dumping popcorn down his throat. Bam 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 bam. He almost jumped from how loud the knocking on his door was. Gah! Who knocks that loud? Now a bit annoyed, he paused the TV and turned to the door. Who is it? Taking that as come, the culprit behind the knocking opened the door, revealing herself to be Kiba. Greetings, newbie. I am Kiba. It is your honor to meet me. Kiba introduced herself arrogantly. Ken raised an eyebrow. My honor? I think you got that the other way around. It's your honor to meet me. You're looking at the future #1 hero after all. And that is why I am here, Kiba explained. You see, there are many living under this household who believe that they are the future #1 hero. But we all know there can only be one number one. And that of course will be me. But, to prove this I must crush any of those who would question my power. And now it's your turn to be crushed? Oh really? Ken stood up and looked down cockily at the smaller child. Well, then I guess we have to settle this. One-on-one. My thoughts exactly. Kiba said, returning the cocky smirk. But we must settle this tonight. I have preparations I must make. I will be live streaming our battle for my hundreds of thousands of minions to enjoy. Before she had his interest. Now, she had his attention. Wait, so I get to have hundreds of thousands of people see how awesome I am while I kick your butt? Ken smiled as he imagined a large crowd of people cheering him on. Heck yeah. If you mean that hundreds of thousands of people get to see your shameful defeat, then yes, that is what will be happening. Kiba told him. Until then, I bid you goodbye. And without another word, Kiba left. Ken smirked. I'll show that girl who's boss. Little did he know he would regret that mindset come tomorrow. Later that night, Ken and Kiba were outside in a clearing in the forest, staring down each other while about 10 feet away. Nara was on the side, having volunteered to be the camera girl, partially because she was hoping to see her brother get his butt handed to him. Fu was also present, managing the live stream on a laptop. We're on, Fu shouted. Nara held up the camera, and the audience saw Kiba and Ken square off. Hello, my minions. Recently we have received new arrivals at the house. One of which is the one you see in front of Ken. Kiba introduced. Hey, Ken said, crossing his arms trying to look cool. And the other one is the one holding the camera. Her name is Nara. Kiba explained. Hi. Nara waved her hand in front of the camera. Today I will be having a battle with Ken, to prove who is superior, Kiba announced. Now without any further delay, Ken. I will give you 10 seconds to transform before I start attacking. Choose whichever form you'd like. And choose wisely. Hey. Well then. Ken smirked as he pressed the button on his Omnitrix. Let me show you what 4 arms can do. After a flash of green light, Ken's form was replaced by 4 arms. Guess we're starting. Nara pressed the button on her own Omnitrix, and selected in transformation, and, after a flash of pink light, she was XLR8. You ready for a beating, little girl? Ken asked cockily, as he cracked all of his knuckles. I'll let you get the first shot. Kiba smirked, and dramatically threw her cloak off of her body. Thank you. What a gentleman. Suddenly, Kiba dashed towards him at horrifying speeds. All 4 of Ken's eyes widened as he could barely see Kiba coming at him, but he couldn't react before Kiba jumped up and drop-kicked him right in the chest. Gah! Ken shouted out in pain, as his body flew back dozens of feet through many trees. His body tumbled through the dirt until he managed to grab the ground with all 4 of his hands and dig his fingers into it, slowing himself until eventually, he stopped. Okay. She's fast, and she's strong. Ken pulled himself up and rubbed his chest. This might be a bit harder than I thought. A second later, Kiba jumped out of trees and went to dive kick Ken. Ken just barely managed to react to this and grabbed Kiba out of the air by her foot and slammed her into the ground. Now with the overconfidence being literally kicked out of him, Ken didn't relent and started pounding Kiba into the ground with all 4 of his arms, and all of his strength. The earth shook slightly with each blow, and Kiba sunk further and further into the ground. After a few seconds, she grabbed 2 of his arms, and tugged him closer to her, before kicking his chest, causing him to go flying off of her. Oof! Ken flew through the air for half a minute, before coming crashing down into the ground, a few feet away from Kiba. Both kids took a few moments to recover, before rising to their feet and staring each other down. Knowing she was faster than him, Ken decided to rush forward first, charging at her with his arms outstretched to grab her. Kiba did the same, and the 2 clashed, locking hands. Although Ken's hands were way bigger than Kiba's, fortunately, while Kiba's hands were busy, Ken had another pair, and his lower arms punched Kiba in the face 2 times. Grrr, Kiba growled and grit her teeth. She pushed back against Ken, immediately overpowering him and causing him to move back, keeping his lower arms out of range of her, while still having their arms locked. No way. She's stronger than 4 arms. Ken's eyes widened in horror, as he realized just how badly he underestimated his opponent. Kiba broke free of Ken's grip, and charged at his legs, kicking them out from under him and causing him to fall to the ground. Then before he could get back up, she grabbed his legs and started spinning him around. Whoa. 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 Ken put his hands over his mouth to keep himself from throwing up, as he spun even faster and faster, the world around him becoming a blur. Gonna hurl. What? You? Not wanting him to throw up anywhere near her, Kiba threw him high into the air, far away from her. Ken screamed as he went flying through the air for almost a full minute before he started falling. Fear built up inside of him as he saw the ground get closer and closer. He put his arms over his face to protect himself and then crash. He hit the ground, hard. So hard it kicked up an eruption of dirt and dust. When the dust cleared, Ken was left lying there in a crater, his body splayed out and in pain. Oh you! Ken groaned as he continued to lay there and let the pain wash over him. A few seconds later, Nara came speeding in, still pointing the camera at him. You were getting thrown around like a ragdoll. Nara snickered. You ready to give up yet, dork? Not on your life. Ken started to raise himself up, and onto his feet. Well, then you better be ready. Because she was right behind me. Nara warned him. Just at that moment Kiba came rushing out of the bushes and lunged at him. Ken moved to the side just in time to miss Kiba, whizzing past him like a bullet. I can't let her get close to me or I am toast. Ken thought, looking around to see if there was anything he could use to his advantage. He saw a rocky cliffside about 10 feet away from him, and immediately knew he had to head towards it. Of course, there was the issue of how he was gonna make it there without Kiba making it to him first. A question he would have to answer soon, as Kiba was once again lunging towards him. With not much time to think, he swung back his arms, before bringing them back forward with a thunderous clap that sent a shockwave forward, right at Kiba. The shockwave hit Kiba dead on, causing her to go flying back. Not letting this moment go to waste, Ken booked it towards the rocky cliffside, making his way over to it in a couple of seconds. Meanwhile, Kiba had gotten back up, and was about to make her way back to Ken, when suddenly she got pelted in the face with a rock. Gah! Ken was now ripping rocks out of the cliffside, and throwing them at Kiba, rapid fire. Gah! Ah! Bah! Kiba put her hands out in front of her and she was hit with rock after rock, every other second. After a few more moments of this assault, eventually, Kiba just said screw it and charged through the onslaught of rocks, tanking the blows to get closer to Ken. Quickly realizing that the rocks wouldn't buy him any time, Ken jumped up a few feet, causing Kiba to dash straight into the cliff, hitting herself against the rocks and causing a massive impact crater. Ken dug his fingers into the rocky cliff, making an indent so he could stay on the wall and away from Kiba. Kiba looked up at him with a scowl. For a so-called future #1 hero, you seem to be fond of running away rather than fighting me. It's called tactics. Look it up. Ken quipped before he went back on the offensive. He dug his 2 upper arms into the cliffside to keep him up there, while his lower arms started ripping chunks of the cliff out, and threw them at Kiba. This again. Kiba shouted in rage, as she started zipping around the area to avoid the rocks. However, after losing her patience she soon developed a new plan. She simply just jumped at him. Gah! Ken shouted as Kiba hit his back, forcing his face into the wall. The vampire girl clung to his back, kicking away Ken's lower arms as he tried to grab her feet. She then grabbed his head, and started smashing it into the cliff, over and over, and over again. Then, she moved over to his neck, and bit into it with her fangs, and started sucking the blood out of his body. Why you little? Ken flipped around, facing his back to the cliff, and smashing Kiba into it, but she held on and kept sucking his blood. Ken grabbed Kiba's head with one of his arms and tried to pull her off of him, but Kiba's strength was too immense, and he wasn't making much progress in getting her off. He quickly gave that up and started smashing his back, and by proxy, Kiba into the wall repeatedly. But even then he wasn't getting anywhere. Out of options, Ken had one last idea. He flipped around again, facing his back away from the cliff, and then leapt off it, falling towards the ground with Kiba going with him. With not much time before she hit the ground, Kiba took her fangs out of Ken and kicked him off of her. Her intention was to then flip around and land on her feet in a classic superhero landing. Of course, that would require a lot of practice and experience, which she did not have, so what actually happened was that she flipped around, positioned her feet towards the ground, and then tipped over and fell on her face. Kiba groaned as she pulled her face out of the ground. Curses. Thump. Ken fell a few feet away from her, attempting to do the same thing, with the same results. His face planted firmly into the dirt. Nara giggled in the background. The two pulled themselves up and entered another stare down. "You're clever shapeshifter, I'll give you that," Kiba complimented as she panted and breathed heavily. Her dress was dirty and tattered, and she had more than a few cuts and bruises on her face. "Yeah, and you're a lot stronger than I thought," Ken admitted. His clothes were also torn and his body was just as battered and bruised as Kiba's. "But just cause you're a little stronger and faster doesn't mean you've beat me." Kiba smirked. "Hey. It's funny that you still think you can win. Even though you've already lost. You see, as clever as you thought you were, you've made the biggest blunder you could have made." Ken's eyes widened and he looked down at Omnitrix, which was now flashing red. "No. BRR. Your time." Kiba started her sentence. BRR is up," Kiba said, finishing it. BRRRRR. In a flash of red light, Ken was returned to his normal form. "All you, man." Before he tried to do anything else, Kiba dashed at him at speeds he could no longer react to and swept his legs out from under him, causing him to fall on his back, and then put her foot on his chest. The vampire girl, high of victory, looked down at her defeated opponent and gave the biggest shit-eating grin he had ever seen. "Victory is mine."